Good evening, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on. I will declare the meeting open at 6:30 p.m. while the governance team try and get rid of that echo. How are we doing? Sorry, it's the first time this has ever happened. Okay. No. How is that? Apologies to listeners online. Testing? Yes, success. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. As I said, I declared the briefing session open at 6:30 p.m. It is now 6:32. The proceedings of the briefing session are recorded electronically in accordance with the Council's recording and live streaming of Council meetings, Council policy, except for matters of a confidential nature. Cameras have been positioned in such a way as to avoid members of the public. However, by being present at the meeting, members of the public consent to the possibility that their image may be live streamed to the public. Recordings of this live stream will also be made available on the City's website following the meeting, and the official record of the meeting will be the written minutes kept in accordance with the Local Government Act 1995 and any relevant regulations. First item of business is declarations. If you just bear with me, I have a few. First of all, for Councillor Kingston, it's an interest that may affect impartiality for item 13.2.3. As Councillor Kingston is the Secretary of the Friends of Yellowgonga, which has an interest in the regional park. Further declaration from Councillor Kingston for item 13.1.6, the proposed animal local law. It's an interest that may affect impartiality as Councillor Kingston is the Secretary of the Friends of Yellowgonga, which has made a submission. A declaration from myself for item 13.1.3, amendment to LPS 3 at 15 Delar Street in Joondalup. It's an interest that may affect impartiality as representatives of the applicant met with myself and with the city's planning officers prior to lodging the application. A further declaration from myself for item 12.5, status of legal reports. That is a financial interest as I work for Thompson Gear, but I do not work on City of Joondalup matters there. Further declaration for item 12.11, list of payments, also from me. It's an interest that may affect impartiality as I work for Thompson Gear, but I do not work on City of Joondalup matters there. Next declaration being item 12.17, Prince Regent Park Clubroom tender, also an interest that may affect impartiality from myself. This is that my brother provides electrical contracting services to Hickey Constructions. Declaration from Councillor Raftis for item 13.1.2, the draft new residential development local planning policy. It's an interest that may affect impartiality as Councillor Raftis owns and resides in a property within Housing Opportunity Area 4. A declaration from Councillor Chester for item 12.2, which is Corinthian Court. It's an interest that may affect impartiality as many of the residents of Corinthian Court are known to Councillor Chester. And a further declaration from Councillor Chester for item 13.1.6. This is an interest that may affect impartiality as Councillor Chester is engaging with DBCA staff to have some of the Yellowgonga Regional Park included in the city's cat prohibited areas. Are there any further declarations, councillors? Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you for item 12.2. It's a interest that may affect impartiality as I assisted with the original petition to remove the tree.
Thank you. Any further declarations? If not, we'll proceed then to the deputations. Deputation requests are made in writing and addressed to the Mayor. A time period of up to 15 minutes is set aside for each deputation, and deputations are not to exceed 5 people in number, and only 3 of those people are at liberty to address elected members and to respond to questions that elected members may have. Noting the number of deputations that we have tonight, which is 7, and that we allow an hour for deputations. We're allowing 8 minutes for deputations this evening for each of those deputations. But if you don't need to use your full 8 minutes, if there's extra time at the end, we'll allocate that to questions from elected members if they have them. So I call forward for our first deputation, Greg Green from Kingsley in relation to item 12.2.
Right. Mayor Jacob, council members, City of Joondalup. My name is Greg Green. I live in the Corinthian Court Retirement Village in Kingsley. I'm talking about the request for a removal.
Mr Mayor, could the gentleman please speak into the microphone?
No worries. Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Green. Perfect, that's good.
I'm talking in respect to the removal of a tree in Corinthian Court. I sent an email to all the council members and the Mayor back on the 24th of February this year stating my concerns. This is a very short follow-up of how things appear to be going. I speak to you as a resident of the Corinthian Court Retirement Village in Kingsley, many of whom have spent the past 12 months advocating for the removal of a large tree that poses significantly safety and wellbeing concerns. We appreciate the Council's commitment to environmental preservation. However, we believe that our concerns as senior citizens whose homes are directly affected by this tree deserve equal consideration. The proximity of this tree to several units presents not only a physical hazard, but also led to ongoing stress and anxiety for many residents. The risks associated with falling branches, damage and potential structural impacts have raised serious concerns about safety, particularly during adverse weather conditions. Furthermore, the stress generated by this tree significantly affect our quality of life, contributing to feelings of unease and discomfort that impact our mental health. Despite raising these concerns through petitions and discussions, the Council's recent decision to keep the tree in situ appears to have prioritised existing guidelines over the lived experiences of us senior citizens. While regulations serve an important role, they should not overlook the very real fears and practical challenges faced by those living under its canopy. We kindly request that the Council reconsider its stance by directly engaging with residents in a more meaningful manner and ultimately allowing for the removal of this tree in favour of a solution that prioritises the well-being of those who call this village home. We have agreed to replacing this tree with a more suitable variety for this area, and we also have ground in another area of the village that we could use for further planting of trees, thus having more trees and not less in the village. We appreciate the opportunity to present our case at this briefing session and sincerely hope the Council will take our concerns into account with fairness and empathy. We look forward to your response and a resolution that ensures the safety and peace of our community. Sincerely, Greg. I've also got a short letter here. One of our residents sent it into the Council. I don't know if it, but he's asked me to read it out. I received an email from the City of Joondalup, but am unable to attend the briefing session to which I have been invited. I have therefore put my thoughts together and hope that they can be copied to Council members. I love trees, but this particular tree is simply too big for its location, specifically for retention. It provides great summer shade over our villa and on hot afternoons. It looks marvellous, except for the ring bark scarring of at least half its circumstances. This ring bark has been caused by parrots. We have actually put wire around there to stop that happening. Reasons for removal: the tree is only 7 metres from our villa and it is at least 24 metres high. It makes a huge mess by constantly dropping leaves, twigs, occasional branches and masses of nuts every year. Paths and roadways require constant cleaning up, sometimes daily is not even enough. In the event of a northwest storm, the tree would cover the whole of our villa. It is scary, especially at night. There are 5 villas within 20 metres of this huge tree, including 3 villas within 10 metres. In actual fact, it's less than 7 metres. In conclusion, I support without reservation the removal of this tree. It is simply too big for the location, and that's signed by Bob Rusco of Villa 64. That is me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Green. Councillors, any questions? Mr Green, if you don't mind, please. Thank you. It's sometimes hard being the first. Councillor Chester.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Could you please give me the name of the email that you just read out? Thank you.
I have actually got the email here. The headline was Greg Green, Corinthian Court, Malanda Boulevard, Kingsley, 24th of February 2025. Mayor and City Councillors, City of Joondalup, Joondalup WA. Subject: planning application DR15-119-02. Request for removal of hazardous tree and replace with a new tree. That was the heading.
Thank you.
I've got the whole lot here, but it's virtually similar lines to what I've just said.
Yep. Thank you. Councillor Kingston.
Thank you for the presentation. During your statement, you raised that you had structural concerns. Is that from the tree and branches falling, or is that roots of the tree affecting the structural?
It's mainly, my main concern is the branches falling, but of course it is within 4 metres of one dwelling. I guess we've got to wonder why it was really ever approved in the first place. 8 years ago, back in 2016, it probably appeared like a good idea to keep the tree in situ, but over a period of time, perhaps that idea has not been as good as first planned out, and we are finding out that it's not quite as good as we'd hoped.
Thank you, Mr Green. Further question?
That's it. Thank you.
Councillor O'Neill?
Thank you. My question is in relation to the safety issues. On average, in a week, how many near incidents of tripping or hazards or for the residents would you estimate if you knew?
As I said, sometimes daily is not enough to sweep this up. This tree, we've only got one road path in and out of where we are, and this tree completely overhangs it. Whatever drops down comes down. We've got people here that have trouble walking. We do actually take it upon ourselves to keep these nuts and things clear. Masonic Care, the village managers, have actually put signs up saying, take care when walking under this tree, it's dangerous. So they're also aware of it. It just appears that the agreement between the council and the masons, which was made for good reasons, keeping a lovely tree, but over time it probably hasn't proved to be such a smart idea.
Thank you, Mr Green. That concludes our time. Thank you. Mr John Whittle and Judith Whittle.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, staff and members of the public. Judy and I would like to speak in support of the application by Masonic Care to remove the tulip tree and replace it with a more suitable tree. In April 2024, a petition signed by 63 residents from Corinthian Court Village was lodged with the council, requesting the removal and replacement of the tulip tree at 3A Malanda Boulevard. While Joondalup Planning and Development Services have recently assessed the application, according to the relevant planning framework and residential design codes, we believe the serious health and safety concerns of the residents and visitors have been overlooked. We have been approached on numerous occasions by residents who are extremely concerned about their health and safety and welfare because of the tulip tree. All residents in stage 3 must walk under the tree canopy every time they exit or re-enter their units, including to collect mail, access rubbish tins, attend the village office, or going to use village facilities or visit other units. There's only one access way. The tree is approximately 18 metres high and constantly drops debris such as branches, sticks and nuts. If someone or something was hit by falling debris from this height, it may well cause significant damage or physical damage. Our community values the environment and understands the importance of maintaining green spaces and the tree canopy in metropolitan areas. However, the safety and well-being of our residents must take precedence, and the current state of this tree presents an unacceptable level of risk. The city's urban planner emailed us outlining the formal planning process. Please note, we're not seeking to change the original landscaping plan. We are simply replacing the existing tree with another more suitable tree that does not pose such risks. This compromise would help maintain the environmental balance whilst ensuring the safety and well-being of residents. Recently, a large branch fell on the lawn in Langley Circle, that's our street where we live, and that Langley Circle is used by many residents to access their units. Just a few minutes before this large branch fell, a number of residents had walked over the lawn to access their homes. The average age of our village residents is 81. Several people are in their 90s. The tree continually drops nuts and branches onto the access area in Langley Circle. These fallen nuts and branches pose a considerable risk to our elderly residents and visitors. Many of them have reduced vision and many have mobility issues. Furthermore, several residents rely on mobility equipment, making the uneven and hazardous surface created by the falling debris even more dangerous. Walking on these nuts is like walking on marbles. They are extremely slippery and make accessing our homes exceedingly difficult and dangerous. There have been several incidents where residents have slipped or had the nuts caught under their feet or shoes. The potential consequences of walking on these hazards are dire and may result in severe injury or even death, especially as many of our residents are at significant risk of falling. One resident in our village is currently undertaking litigation with another local government authority after tripping on public property. It is extremely important for the mental health and well-being of all residents that they are encouraged to go out, walk, socialise and attend various activities inside and outside our village. The government encourages aged people to remain as healthy and independent as possible and live in their own homes, which should be safe and accessible. Again, many residents have mobility issues and they are very hesitant about accessing Langley Circle because of the risks associated with the falling nuts and branches. Unfortunately, this increases social isolation and that impacts on mental health. Legal Aid WA considers social isolation in relation to older people a form of elder abuse. Social isolation is not having face-to-face contact with family, friends and support services. Social isolation has been linked to various negative health outcomes, including increased risk of chronic diseases, mental health issues and shorter lifespans. Masonic Care WA operate Corinthian Court Retirement Village and have had many residents express their concerns about access and safety issues relating to Chewett Tree. Masonic Care has recognised the risk to residents and several $1,000s have been spent on tree surgeons to prune and lop the tree. However, this hasn't and cannot prevent debris from continually falling daily, and the problem still exists. These ongoing costs burden all residents who are on fixed incomes, and this fails to mitigate the daily hazards. Everyone has the right to a quiet life in their home without nuisances or actions that interfere with the use and enjoyment of their property, including safe access to and from their home. Being involved in attempting to alleviate this physical risk and other issues caused by the Chewett Tree has generated considerable stress and anxiety for us and many residents. It is imperative that councillors consider the well-being and safety of residents as a priority. The retention of this tree under the current DAC places our vulnerable senior citizens at undue risk. We believe that the removal of this tree is not only justified, but necessary to ensure a safe living environment for all residents and visitors. Please remember that we will replace the tree with an appropriate species that will not pose the same risks as this Chewett Tree. Expert advice reinforces our concerns. The WA Department of Education in 2013 recommended that Chewett trees not be planted in populated areas due to their size and limb shedding. The Ludlow Chewett Forest Restoration Group in 2020 state that Chewett trees should not be within 40 metres of buildings. This Chewett tree, in fact, is within 2 metres of one unit and within 20 metres of 5 units. We respectfully request that councillors overturn the Planning and Development Service's recommendation and approve the application to remove and replace the Chewett tree with a more suitable tree. This action will demonstrate the council's commitment to the safety and welfare of its residents whilst preserving environmental values. We look forward to councillors' favourite response. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just really quickly, if I could ask, how many residents are in this facility in total? Do you know an approximate number?
How many residents in total? 100.
Yeah, 100. And out of that 100, how many of those have issues with mobility? Like a percentage-wise, would you say?
Probably 3/4. There would be a lot use walking sticks, a lot use walking frames, wheel walkers and wheelchairs.
Yeah. And just really quickly with that then, so would you say that those 3/4 of the people that have those mobility issues are essentially detained in their homes due to this tree?
Certainly the residents that live in Langley Circle, where the Chewett tree is, people, including myself, I have chronic arthritis, I have difficulty walking, and more often not I use a walking stick. I have to be very, very careful how I walk out my front door. If I walk on the lawn, there's Stuart nuts. If I walk on the road, there's Stuart nuts. If I go in the footpath between my villa and the one next door, there's Stuart nuts. I can't walk outside. It's our only access.
We've got no other way of going.
Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Our next deputation is on item 13.1.1, proposed local development plan, 45 Country Club Boulevard, Connelly. And I call forward Dan Lees from Element Advisory and James Christo.
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. My name is Dan Lees. I'm a town planning consultant engaged by Joondalup Resorts, speaking in support of this proposed local development plan. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Next slide, please. By way of background, in 2020, Council considered a proposed scheme amendment so as to contemplate residential apartments on part of the Joondalup Resorts site, subject to the preparation and approval of a local development plan. Next slide, please. Council resolved unanimously to support this, and I note that a number of the councillors from 2020 are still here with us this evening, which is great to see. Next slide, please. The proposed local development plan, or LDP, is the culmination of a thorough series of engagements with the city's planning team and the city's appointed design review panel. The intent of this LDP is to facilitate high quality, higher density residential development within an enviable landscaped setting. This is entirely aligned with the city's own local planning strategy, which seeks to accommodate residential development in appropriate locations and to diversify housing stock within the city so as to cater for a range of housing needs. And in this way, via the LDP, residential apartments can be sensitively located within a landscape setting without detriment to neighbours. Next slide, please. The provisions contained within the proposed LDP will facilitate a contemporary residential apartment addition to the existing facilities at Joondalup Resort. The future residential development will be of a suitably high quality, commensurate with the unique location, providing future residents with views of the surrounding golf course, as well as access to the existing amenities of the Joondalup Resort, which would not ordinarily be available in a typically located townhouse or apartment development. We recognise that this is a change that would enable the consideration of a tall building in the suburb of Connelly, which is predominantly low-rise and a suburb of single houses. However, this is the appropriate location for such a building, given the highly unique characteristics of the topography and the site setting. As Council will appreciate, the site sits within a hollow as a result of this being a former quarry. And owing to the surrounding golf course, the closest houses are over 165 metres away. This is considered to be a significant separation between the existing and future houses and is entirely unique. As a result of this setting, there will be no overshadowing of any surrounding residences, no overlooking or visual privacy incursions owing to that significant separation distance. The Planning Officer report that is before you is positive, and it has recommended that Council support the LDP subject to appropriate modifications, and I would respectfully request your support at the Council meeting later this month. I'll now hand over to architect James Christo from Christo Design Group to talk through the design evolution of the proposal, and there's a series of views that are available in this package.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. I'll take you through. As Daniel mentioned, we presented the scheme twice to the DRP, and we worked closely with your planning officers to finalise our LDP submission next. So we looked at the impact of height. We drew some sections across the site, incorporating the residential area, and we tried a variety of different scenarios. Next. We looked at, there's a simple block form to show you where the sites are. Next. We looked at one option where we used a lower height building around the perimeter with a courtyard in the middle. Next. And the impact that would have. Next. Again, distant views from the golf course. Next. 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 And then we looked at separating those buildings and stepping. Next. So the height is limited to 2 areas, predominantly on the northeast and the northwest, and the steps down toward the middle, open in the middle part of the site to view across the fairways. Next. That's developed a bit further. Next. There's this very simple format of height, where the height is arranged stepping down in the middle. Townhouses actually hide the car parking behind, underneath the podium. Next. In plan, so the plans have been twisted to make sure there's vistas, minimising impact and view lines. Next. The proposed LDP plan outlined by element. Next. And then the 4-storey structure next to the existing hotel, predominantly smaller rooms, 45 to 55 square metres, over a car park. Next. So if we go through these images, some images of the 4-storey over the existing car park joining the hotel. Next. Entry to, arrival of the apartment closest to Quarry 1. Next, townhouses. And then view from the hotel, the main entry from the hotel. Next. And then view from the fairways. Again, the townhouses, step-in of podium and car parking hidden, and the step-in of the apartments. Next. View lines from viewed from a distance. Next. Again, viewed from the golf course, impact on the fairways. Again, that open space between buildings. Next. The walkways that join the 2 apartments. Next. And then a view line of, now some view lines from taken a little bit further back. It's very hard to see on the screen in terms of how this plan's been arranged with the vegetation to minimise its visual impact. Next. Another view line. And again, there's a map that shows you where that view line's taken. And again, the way that step-in of the building and where the heights have been contained. Next. Another view line from a residence. Unfortunately, I can't view it from here. But again, these are available for the city and the impact that has within the existing vegetation. Next. And again, from certain viewpoints, it's almost very difficult to actually view the buildings. Next. There's another view line. Next. And another view line from more the northeast direction. Next. And another view line showing the impact of the low vegetation that surrounds this particular site and on the fairways, because you're looking through 2 fairways. That's the residential, the existing single residential residence. Next. Shadow lines, there's no impact on shadow. Next. And then just showing some areas where trees will be removed, but then we are replacing a lot of trees on the upper deck area in relationship to the design, as well as all the balconies that are stepping down will have vegetation as part of the unit design.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your deputation.
Thank you.
For our next deputation, I call forward Nicola Phillips.
Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the community. My name is Nicola Phillips and I'm here today to formally oppose the approval of the proposed local development plan for 45 Country Club Boulevard in Connelly. With some understanding of planning frameworks and the zoning of residential areas, my initial reaction to this proposal was disbelief. I assumed it had to be a mistake. Surely a proposal of this scale in a low-density golf course suburb would be swiftly dismissed as incompatible. But as I began to investigate further, I discovered that through the operation of current planning controls, this outcome, as implausible as it first seemed, is now technically compliant. So how did we get here? Under the City of Joondalup's Local Planning Scheme number 3, number 45 Country Club Boulevard in Connelly is designated as a private community purposes reserve. This zoning clarification permits the land to be used for community-orientated facilities such as private recreational spaces, educational institutions and religious establishments. In 2020, the City proposed Scheme Amendment number 6 to introduce additional uses for this site, specifically allowing group dwelling and multiple dwelling developments. These additional uses were contingent upon the preparation and approval of a local development plan to guide future development on the site. The LDP was meant to act as a safeguard. And importantly, the planning system acknowledged this sensitivity. In the City of Joondalup Council minutes dated the 23rd of June 2020, it was clearly stated that in order to ensure any future residential development on this site is appropriate in terms of location, scale, and amenity impacts on the surrounding community. Any future residential development will be subject to a local development plan, which will specify the development requirements such as building height, building setbacks, site per dwelling or plot ratio, open space and landscaping requirements. But no specific residential density code was applied, such as R20, R40 or R80. Under the Residential Codes, Volume 2, when multiple dwellings are permitted but no R code is allocated, the RAC0 density path is triggered by default, the highest urban density setting available by default. And so now we're facing a proposal that includes 14-storey towers right in the middle of a low-density residential golf course estate. The RAC0 code was never intended for residential golf estates like Connelly. It's a tool created for major activity centres, dense urban centres, such as the Joondalup City Centre, Subiaco, or even the Perth CBD. Connelly, by contrast, is designed for open spaces, quiet streets, single dwellings, and a strong sense of local community. To apply an RAC0 standard here is simply incompatible with the suburb's purpose, structure, and future livability. So why is it so wrong for Connelly? It's wrong because Connelly was never strategically identified for major urban development. There is no structure plan. There is no broader regional strategy. There is no community-led vision that supports high-rise intensification in this location. Connelly residents bought into a golf club suburb, not a vertical cityscape. The Joondalup Local Planning Strategy speaks about enhancing livability and respecting neighbourhood character. This proposal does neither. And with that, the integrity of Connelly and the trust in our planning system is at risk. We must also consider the precedent. If this kind of intensity is approved here, what stops future developers from pushing the same standards elsewhere across our low-density suburbs? Connelly could become a warning to other communities about what happens when planning loopholes are exploited. So what should have happened? Council had a chance in 2020 to prevent this. Had a specific density like an R60 or R80 code been applied during the scheme amendment, the current LDP would not have been able to propose 14 stories. Had building heights been clearly capped, say at 3 or 4 stories with a maximum R80 zoning, the developer would have had to design within these reasonable limits. By leaving the site uncoded, allowing multiple dwellings, the system has defaulted to an RAC0. The applicant is taking full advantage of that, but the community is being left behind. Tonight, you have a second chance to fix that mistake. I urge Council to do one of two things. Firstly, reject the current local development plan outright, or require major amendments. Set a hard limit on maximum building height with no more than 3 or 4 stories. Cap density to reflect suburban, not urban expectations. Require proper integration into the surrounding environment, respecting the open character of the area. Now, this is not just about one site. This is about protecting the integrity of Connelly as a suburb. This is about ensuring that future planning decisions are strategic, consultative, and community-driven, not the accidental result of regulatory technicalities. Because at its core, this is no longer a question of can we do this? It's a question of should we do this? Should we approve a development of this scale in a low-rise residential community? Should we allow soaring heights and overwhelming built form to redefine a place known for its openness and greenery? And beyond the visual and spatial effects, what about the ethical, environmental and social cost to the very community this council serves? I ask you very sincerely, is this fair? Connelly deserves decisions that reflect its character, its people and its future. Please listen to our community's voice and please defend Connelly. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. I accept that most of you haven't attended council meetings previously, but that will be the only time that clapping is allowed. Now, and I heard someone scoff, and I'll explain why. People come into this room with different views. We've already just heard 2 deputations with different views on this. People will have different views on a range of matters. I will not allow the audience participation to an individual to skew the momentum one way or another. People are to be heard in respectful silence, and a quick reminder, mobile phones are to be switched off or to silent because that occurred as well. But there is to be no applause, there is to be no pushing one way or the other because different people have different views, and tonight is not even a decision-making forum. The council will make its decision on this matter in 2 weeks' time, so I do ask for no applause going forward. Thank you, Ms Phillips, for your deputation. For our next deputation, I call forward John Boyer and Anne Clark, please.
Good evening. My name is John Bowyer. I live at 8 Kingston Heathcourt in Connelly. Mayor Jacobs, councillors and members of the public. As a resident and a proud one, given the privilege that we all enjoy in Connelly, I would like to voice my opinion and reflect on the dramatic impact that the proposed LDP will have on myself, that of my family life, the surrounds, living standards. I reject the LDP entirely. Firstly, I must confess, I'm not a developer, I'm not a good public speaker, I'm not a planner, I'm not an architect, and I'm not an environmental specialist. So I'm limited in this field. So I speak from a very layman's perspective, what it means to me and a number of the community and residents in a similar position. I came to live in Connelly as a consequence of transfer from regional government service. After significant search, we all fell in love with Connelly. The house we purchased was a third lucky attempt. It's quite small on a small block. Our garden is our view. We're animal lovers. We're thrilled to be in close proximity to the national wildlife treasures. Even more excited when we identified that there are rare and threatened bird species, such as the picture back there. The huge old church trees are phenomenal and the breeding grounds for many birds. We are aware that there's some tree canopy preservation laws, and I thought that Joondalup is a forward-thinking city, But this LDP seems to be the exact opposite, and I'd like to know what's happened. But for now, here we are. We live in a literal wildlife sanctuary. We're awakened in the mornings to the sound of birds, nature, peace, and amazing tranquility. Its surroundings are secure and private. All similar blocks look out on the views, and therefore our visual privacy is never threatened. As far as the LDP is concerned, I don't believe it's in character with our housing and Connelly. There's no space for it there. It's completely out of scale. We were not aware of any plan to develop the area when we purchased. Never in our dreams did we expect to see the prospect of 14, 12, and 6-story buildings in the middle of the golf course, depriving us of visual amenity and destroying the fauna and flora, and potentially destroying protected species. Our visual privacy would be non-existent. Their elevated positions, multiple levels staring right down into our houses, bedroom windows, which were designed for the maximum view. We're specifically worried about the noise factor. It comes from all high-rise apartments. It cannot be acoustically controlled, minimised or dampened when they're that far above the tree line. And how will this impact our wildlife? Is the LDP in line with the present and past environmental commitments and promises and the City of Joondalup's commitment to BirdLife Australia? What about the heat, the light, the warming effects on our surrounds? My question is, who are the beneficiaries of the proposal? It's not me, it's not my neighbours, it's not 85% of the community, it's not the suburb. I'm asking, please be the voice of our community, and as per your mandate, our future community will look back at this moment, and we trust you all to make the correct and ethical decision to reject the LDP at this stage. Thank you.
Anne Clark, 33 Cypress Point Retreat, Connelly, and coordinator of the Friends Group of Carnaby Reserve for the last 12 years. While multi-storey apartment buildings can be considered a solution to urban sprawl, they undoubtedly have significant adverse environmental impacts. Tall buildings negatively impact the environment by increasing air pollution, contributing to the urban heat island effect, and altering the natural airflow patterns. The buildings in this development, constructed with hundreds of glass windows, may provide magnificent views, but even triple glazing studies show they insulate far less efficiently than well-constructed brick walls. Reflective glass can deflect solar radiation downwards, increasing temperatures on nearby surfaces, such as pavements, other buildings, and surrounding greenery. As this development is in the middle of 2 golf fairways, the building shadow will reduce the amount of sunlight impacting photosynthesis, limiting plant growth, greatly affecting grass growth, and leading to elongated growth in trees. They will also increase the amount of impervious surfaces, preventing water from naturally soaking into the ground and possibly flooding the golf course. A revision of the LDP following its rejection by the Policy Committee seeks a variation to the maximum height of the development to 80 metres, equivalent to potentially 19 stories, rather than the original 14. This amendment increases both the impact on the landscape and exacerbates the visual intrusion into privacy and properties within a larger radius of the development. The setback separation referred to in the LDP of 200 metres approx is totally irrelevant in this instance. The building of multi-storey apartments is a resource-intensive process that will generate substantial carbon emissions as the materials required for construction have a high carbon footprint. An influx of residents with cars lead to higher emissions of CO2 and other air pollutants, contributing to poor air quality and further degradation of the local environment. Country Club Boulevard is a narrow 2-lane road bordered by townhouses and a tree-lined verge, with a golf buggy pedestrian crossing at its entrance, which would be in conflict with heavy construction traffic and eventually residential traffic, causing a potential accident black spot. This development would do little to solve the housing and rental shortage. Alternative housing models offer designs that benefit the public and not developers who want to turn a profit. It would necessitate the felling of dozens of mature native trees, 28 metres plus tall, which surround the site, with any that remain unlikely to survive. These trees are the habitat of the endangered Carnaby cockatoos, who regularly feed, roost and breed in the hollows of the oldest trees. This year, the trees surrounding the development site and car park have been occupied by a flock of 60-plus forest red-tailed cockatoos, which are classed as vulnerable. BirdLife's annual census, the cocky count, results show an annual decline of 4% in the Perth-Peel coastal plain, mainly due to land clearing and urban sprawl. A survey at the resort this year lists flora and fauna and show that birds will be greatly impacted with the loss of natural habitat, flight patterns, and the danger of reflective glass. Perth has the lowest tree canopy of any Australian capital city at just 16%. In 2020, Joondalup had 12%. Between 2011 and 2020, Perth lost a quarter of its canopy, mainly due to the clearing of private land for development, and more recently had to destroy almost 4,000 trees due to the infestation of the polyphagous shothole borer beetle. A tree canopy plays an essential ecological role, offering shade, regulating temperature, sheltering wildlife, and contributing to the purification of the air by absorbing carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen through photosynthesis. Retaining very old, large, mature trees around a development would require a sufficient deep soil area and depth to support and sustain the tree canopy. We acknowledge the city's 10-year environmental strategy, but would not the nature and scale of this development be totally detrimental and contribute exactly the opposite to what the city is striving to achieve? Connelly is a green leafy sanctuary for its residents, with Joondalup Golf Course at its heart, a jewel in Joondalup's crown. The course is listed as the 11th best public access course in the whole of Australia, and a summary can be found on Golf Australia's website extolling its virtues.
Thank you, Ms Clark. Thank you.
Thank you.
For our next deputation, I call forward Dave Smith.
Good evening. My name is David Smith, 3 Kingston Heath Court, Connelly. Honour Mayor, councillors, members of the Joondalup City staff and the general public gathered in the council chambers. Firstly, on behalf of the majority of the Connelly residents, we'd like to thank and extend our gratitude to the councillors who voted not to support the local development plan at the recent policy decision meeting. It's a step in the right direction that acknowledges the character and amenity of the area and considers the voice of Connelly residents, and I thank you. The character of Connelly has been many decades in the making. Land purchased was subject to a significant pledge and investment protection covenant. Development design codes were R20 and R40, this being the character of Connelly. Land prices were 50% higher than surrounds, and in some cases double. The sale of the golfing estate in the late 1980s was governed by an expression of interest document which formed part of the purchase conditions and development requirements. I will summarise these conditions. It was to be in character and amenity with the surrounds, ancillary and incidental to the surrounds and residential area, a high degree of tree and bushland retention, to be of low-scale form as appropriate to its bush-like settings. Site features were to be that of a resort tucked into a landscape, and importantly, buildings were to be low-rise with pitched roofs, verandas, colonnades with a maximum height of 2 stories. The reason why I mentioned this is because the entire suburb conforms to the R20 and R40 design codes, and all developments, resort, golf course included, conform to the aforementioned. This is the character and amenity of Connelly. The LDP was debated a moment ago by Nicola in some detail, but I might just mention that the notices that were sent out by the city was to a select few houses and not all the residents. But news spread, and this culminated in 85% of some 633 submissions opposing the LDP. Submissions included sound reasons and cannot be ignored. Residents surmised the limited notification was a deliberate tactic to limit responses in order to register resident sentiment.
I won't accept that comment. I ask you to withdraw that. I don't allow comments that reflect adversely on the officer's actions.
I'll continue.
Thank you. Thank you.
The local planning scheme was debated in, as I said, in some detail, but some years ago, in what appears to be a community consultation of limited impact, it was changed to group dwellings and mixed use, as you know. This is why it is vital to stop this LDP as a proposed bulk size and scale as opposed by the Connelly community. The LDP proposed a 6-storey hotel in Site A and Site B, in Site B and Site A, a 14 and 12-storey building. How can these proposed high-density monstrosities of the bulk size, height and scale be within character of Connelly and ancillary incidental surrounds? It simply is inconsistent. I know some critical issues on the LDP and its associated report. Firstly, it ignores key issues such as existing character, amenity, and ignores ancillary and incidental with surrounds. It is incomplete and in not sufficient detail to make informed decisions on key issues. It states that some of what the community rate as important aspects are not of relevance to this LDP. It diverts much needed detail on key issues into future development phases, thus forcing further LDP progress, which in fact is actually needed now. This is a deliberate advancing strategy. It includes a disclaimer clause that accepts no responsibility or accountability for its use and acknowledges that it has no statutory force. It can be varied at any time and without limits. It has inconsistencies with policy regulations and the like, but takes precedence and prevails in such instances of inconsistency and therefore presumably places itself above the law, but it has no statutory force and no responsibility. I think you will agree this is not workable. Consider the legal implications in the event of a catastrophe. As the LDP is infinitely variable, councillors should be aware that the LDP issued to the public for comment in January is not the one that is being presented to you now. The bulk size and height of the use classification are inconsistent with surrounds and certainly not in character or in amenity with the surrounding residential area. The visual landscape and amenity will be destroyed completely, as will the fauna and flora. The group dwelling multiple use classification is also inconsistent with the character of the area and should never have been applied and simply should be withdrawn and returned to private community purpose. The proposed development is also inconsistent with surrounding locality. Connelly is not an urban CBD area, but a suburban area and should be treated as such. The architectural visualizations, some of which you saw just now, depicted the LDP are not created from a realistic and meaningful perspective or viewpoint. The drone images as seen on the Connelly SAS website provides an accurate visualization of surveillance from the proposed buildings, and that's what we coined a phrase, if you can see us, then we can see you. Very simple, but factual, not misleading, and certainly not a farce. The drone footage also demonstrates the complete and utter deprivation of visual privacy, and no amount of separation, acceptable outcomes, or deemed to comply statements can argue or discount the catastrophic effect the imposition this would have on the residents. Public and open space and network. The government livable neighbourhood policy provides for requirements for public open spaces. This should be 10% and is currently less than 4%. The development will exacerbate the problem. The distance to amenity is also a significant issue, as the requirements cannot be met. These requirements are noted in Table 1 of the policy. The lack of public amenity is a significant issue. Councillors, the role and description of councillors notes 5 primary points under the clause 2.10. It states a councillor represents the interests of electors, ratepayers, and the residents of the district. I'm sure we can count on you. As I close, it doesn't have to be this way. Friction between the city and community is counterproductive. In closing, the City of Joondalup, councillors, residents, the general public and business operators, we can work towards a better future for our entire community and our natural environment in a harmonious and collaborative way. Let us be the example of what can be done. Let us focus our enthusiasm towards better community outcomes for all futures. This can be done, and I'm sure we all have the will. Councillors, I thank you for your time. Your rejection of the LDP will serve the community and spare the character and amenity of Connelly and its surrounds. Let's work together, please. I thank you for your ear.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. For our final deputation, I call forward Regan Cake from Dynamic Planning and Development. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors, city staff and members of the public. My name's Regan Cake from Dynamic Planning and Developments, and I'm here tonight to speak in support of initiating the proposed scheme amendment at 15 Delar Street in Joondalup. Requests for scheme amendments are not overly common, and landowners do not pursue them lightly, given the associated time and financial commitment. In this instance, the landowner has spent a number of years trying to sell a property or find a tenant to occupy a development without success. All interested parties are wanting to develop at the site are warehouses and showrooms, and this type of development outcome is not permitted by the planning framework. This market experience has led them to a view that there is no alternative other than to pursue a scheme amendment to enable the warehouse and showroom land uses to be approved at the site. When considering the existing built form in the area west of Joondalup Drive, as illustrated on the slide in front of you, it's not surprising that there's no demand for development in accordance with the current planning framework. This is further reinforced by the fact that only one planning approval has been granted for mixed-use development in line with the planning framework west of Joondalup Drive, and this approval wasn't even implemented. And just the next slide, please. Whilst we understand the City's officers' desire to not preempt the outcomes of a review of the Joondalup Activity Centre plan, our view is that holding development up at the property until the Activity Centre plan is reviewed would simply be delaying the inevitable. This is because we would expect a new boundary of the City Centre precinct will be proposed where Joondalup Drive becomes the westernmost extent of the City Centre precinct. This would allow an expansion of the Joondalup West precinct where the uses proposed by this scheme amendment are able to be approved. This change to the Activity Centre plan would ensure the planning framework has better alignment with existing development in the area, which is simply not going anywhere in the short to medium term. It would also better align with market expectations, as there remains a very strong interest in the light industrial service commercial type development that presently exists on the western side of Joondalup Drive, which we do expect to remain in the future as the residential population within the city grows and the demand for these services increase. Next slide, please. To provide some context on the likely development outcome that would result from allowing the warehouse and showroom land uses to be approved at the site, we've provided examples of similar development within our scheme amendment report and also on the slide before you. These developments provide the more active uses like incidental office space or showroom uses toward the street, with the warehouse units towards the rear of the site. The result is quite an attractive streetscape outcome that we consider would comply with the development requirements noted in the Joondalup Activity Centre plan, with the exception of the minimum building heights, which we're also seeking to amend as part of this scheme amendment. In comparing this development outcome to what is existing in the immediate area west of Joondalup Drive, we consider that it is much closer to the vision intended by the Activity Centre plan, with nil setbacks to the streets and some activation of the footpath. And whilst the objectives of the city centre precinct aren't necessarily being met by virtue of the proposed development outcome and uses, we stress that these are only to be given due regard and are capable of variation. Now, in deciding whether or not to initiate the proposed amendment, there are a few points we hope councillors keep in mind. Firstly, the decision is simply to initiate an amendment as opposed to approve an amendment. This simply allows the decision-making process to proceed to public advertising and a more formal assessment process. Secondly, this is the only vacant property within the city centre precinct west of Joondalup Drive, and as such, the proposed amendment will not establish an undesirable precedence for future development. Thirdly, not initiating this amendment is likely to just be delaying the inevitable development outcome that will result at the site until such time as the Activity Centre plan is reviewed. Finally, the objectives noted in the Activity Centre plan are simply to be given due regard, and despite the non-compliance, the amendment can still proceed and be approved. In wrapping up, we kindly request Council resolve to adopt the recommendation of the Policy Committee and initiate the proposed amendment at the Council meeting in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cake. Questions, councillors? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you for your presentation. My question is just for the additional use. You said that you would support having warehouse and storage, and the indicative outcomes that you're seeking on the site are to have warehouse storage for the back of the site and then showrooms at the front. What proportion of the site would then be warehouse or storage?
It'll ultimately be up to the eventual purchaser or developer of that lot. I guess the scheme amendment process isn't determining a development outcome. More than likely, you'd want to see a level of activity toward the streetscape, and then almost everything behind that could be warehouse as low active uses.
Councillor?
Thank you. And following on to that, I understand, yes, that this is a scheme amendment and it's not the development application itself, but as representing the client, do you have any understanding of his aspirations?
Mr. Cake?
I can't comment on final development outcomes yet. I think that they're in a position, I guess, where they need to have confidence around the proposed use before they push the button on preparing sort of development plans and testing the actual market interest, whether it's multi-unit development, sort of a smaller showroom, larger warehouse. The decisions just haven't been made yet, unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
Further questions? Thank you, Mr. Cake.
Thanks.
That concludes deputations. Our next item of business is public question time. There's a set of procedures which relates to public question time, and I'll request that you follow my direction at all times. You're able to ask up to 2 questions. Your questions should be directed through the chair and also asked in a polite and respectful manner. Also, being a briefing session, questions must relate to an item that is listed on the briefing session agenda. As is our practice, we maintain a register for people who can put down their name to ask a question, so I'll start there, and I'll probably almost certainly have time to go to the gallery more broadly if there are further questions. But I'll call forward for our first question, Mr. John Boyer.
Thank you. In relation to the Joondalup golf course, Burleigh Heads Golf Course in the Gold Coast has a similar development. They retrospectively had to build a huge net, twice the height of the building, along the side of the golf course and the building. And this was due to a resident being hit and injured by the golf ball. In the case of Joondalup, why has anything like this not been addressed in the plans? Thank you.
Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Where we're at in the development process, if you like, is still fairly early days, where a proposal is to establish the framework. So the local development plan sets the, I guess, the guidelines and direction of what a future development would undertake. It would be my expectation that as part of a subsequent application stage, if the local development plan is approved, that some consideration to how they would manage the interface between the building and the golf course would take place. But having said that, I'm quite happy to take the question on notice, discuss it with the applicant to see if they've got any information that they can share that we could provide as part of the local development plan process as well.
Do you have a second question?
No, thank you. Just that was the point I might take. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? If not, that concludes public question time. Thank you. Yep, please. Sorry, you're down in the corner there, so I missed you. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Thank you for taking the question. I'm afraid there's a little bit of a preamble, but not too much.
I don't allow a preamble.
Okay, then well,
just hear me for a second, please.
Yep.
I will afford you a public statement if you wish to make a statement, but I'd ask the question directly, and then if there's a preamble, you'll have an opportunity to ask a statement.
Well, it is the question. Okay.
Thanks.
The City of Joondalup's planning consultation local planning policy, page 13, table 4, consultation requirements states yes to stakeholder notification letters, no maximum distance is specified. Despite this, letters were only sent to residents within 500 metres of lot 535. Even me, with an unobstructed view of it, was excluded. And every resident of Connelly would be affected by the increased traffic volumes on Fairway Circle. So why was a distance of 500 metres chosen when no distance is specified?
Just while the officers collect that, as per our meeting procedures, can I just have your name and street?
Yes,
please?
it's Robert Ross, 17 Indooroopilly Place.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. 500 metres as a radius was determined to be appropriate, giving consideration to what the maximum radius that we receive guidance for by the planning and development regulations, which I think from memory is about 200 metres. But I'm quite happy to clarify that information. We did take into account that it's not only about radius. We did also write to some properties outside of that radius that interfaced with the golf course as well.
I think that would be my second question. Why were certain properties chosen outside the 500 metre distance, again, despite no distance being specified, but yet those people in Indooroopilly Place with direct views across the golf club and in fact able to see the clubhouse were not provided with letters? And then luckily we got Connelly SOS people put a letter in my postbox, which made me realise just a few days before that I could make a submission. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made a submission.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, as I mentioned, whilst the radius was probably the leading consideration of who we wrote to, we did also consider some properties outside of the radius, and we based that judgment, if you like, regarding in relation to the interface that those properties may have had with the golf course. We also wrote to the Connelly Residents Association as well, in addition to people that we wrote to directly.
The Connelly Residents Association does
no,
not represent the people of Connelly.
Mr Ross.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That concludes public question time. Next item of business is public statement time. There's a set of procedures which relates to public statement time, and I'll request that you follow my direction at all times. You're able to make a statement for up to 2 minutes. Your statement should be directed to the chair and also be polite and respectful. Now, statements made at a briefing session also must relate to an item on the agenda. Also, as per our briefing session rules, those who've made a deputation cannot make a statement on the same item. Are there any statements? Thank you. If not, I declare public statement time closed. Next item of business is confirmation of minutes, if you're following the agenda. However, that will be dealt with at the ordinary council meeting on Tuesday the 27th of May, as will item 9 being announcements by the presiding member without discussion. Item 10 is identification of matters for which the meeting may be closed to the public. Hold on a second. I missed a point. Thank you, Director Parry. I will go back, that's my apologies. Item 7, apologies, and leave of absence. I do have both Councillor Pizzey and Councillor Jones are on a leave of absence, and I have an apology from Councillor Hamilton Prime and also Councillor Fishwick. Otherwise, we have a full house. Item 10, identification of matters for which the meeting may be closed to the public. There is one item, which is item 12.5, status of legal actions report. Also, potentially 2 confidential attachments, being for item 12.16, which is the tender for Malanda Boulevard pedestrian and cycle bridge, which will, noting we've got a lot of Malanda Bridge residents here tonight, may be interested in that one. And also item 12.17.2, which is the tender for Prince Regent Park club facilities. As councillors know, the only confidential aspects of those items is the attachments. So at this stage, I don't propose to go behind closed doors for those unless an elected member has a question on the confidential attachments, at which case I will. I also have a further declaration of interest, sorry to pause the meeting there, from Councillor Hutton. This is for item 13.1.5, proposed revisions to the alfresco activities local planning policy and draft alfresco spaces guidelines. It's a proximity interest as Councillor Hutton's family operates a business affected by the policy. Next item on the agenda is petitions, which again we will deal with at the ordinary council meeting, and we proceed then to the reports section of the agenda. Noting that reports and the reports of committees combine, but there were 3 key items which were raised in deputations and questions. With the council's indulgence, I propose to pull out item 12.2, which is the removal of the mature tuat tree in Corinthian Court, then item 13.1, which is the proposed local development plan at Country Club Boulevard, Connelly, and then item 13.1.3, which is the amendment to LPS 3 for 15 Delar Street, and then I'll return to the front of the agenda and work our way through. And that's also just for the benefit of residents tonight, so that you're not waiting for an extended period of time before the item of which is particular interest, although you are welcome to remain after we've done your item. So I'll start, therefore, at item 12.2, the proposed removal of a mature tulip tree and replacement with an alternative tree at 3A Malanda Boulevard, Kingsley. Councillors, any questions on this item? Councillor Chester.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. With respect to a possible replacement tree, did the city or, in fact, the residents what do they have in mind in terms of size and species of a replacement tree? Do we have any information at all on that?
Director Lee.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Through the application, it was proposed to replace the existing tulip tree with a crepe myrtle or a lemon myrtle. We hadn't got to a point in the discussion with the applicant about what size that might be. I'd also if council were of a view to look at a replacement tree, it's something I would like to discuss also with our Parks and Natural Environment team to seek their guidance as well. But certainly as part of the proposal, a crepe myrtle or a lemon myrtle.
Thank you for that info.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a couple of things really quickly. Have city officers attended the site and looked at the tree, and can they give any explanation as to, I've seen the tree myself, can they give an explanation as to how it would be proposed that the tree limbs could be cut back further when they do appear to obviously have been pruned and consistently pruned and kept in order as much as possible?
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. City officers have attended the site. They attended it as part of their assessment. In terms of what could be done to further prune the tree, it's probably something we would rely on the arborist that supported the application. I do note during the deputation there was reference made to some pruning that had been undertaken. The applicant report and the arborist report suggested that, or made the observation that there hadn't been pruning undertaken, and there would be some benefit to the tree if that was undertaken. So there may have been some work done since the application was made, or certainly since the arborist report was completed. But as I said, in terms of any further pruning, that's something that we would encourage the arborist that the applicants engage to advise them on.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. Just further, just in relation to the safety aspects as well for the residents, my question is one that I'm just wondering how the city, how it came about that it was approved to be keeping that with the DA when it is known that this particular tree does drop nuts like that, and it was allowed to go through the DA originally within such close proximity to residents that you could obviously see that this would become a problem at some stage. How was this allowed?
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I don't have the specific detail in front of me this evening, but I'm happy to provide in the briefing session notes the link to the council report where the original application was considered. However, from recollection, there were several mature trees that were proposed to be removed as part of the original application. This was one that the original applicant proposed to keep, and so it formed part of their landscaping intent for the development, and that's basically what became enshrined in planning conditions. So I think that's probably the information I have this evening, but as I said, I can provide further information for elected members by way of the council report.
And I will obviously flag that I will be lodging an alternate, but should the approval of the removal of the tree be put in place. Is council within its premise to specify particular types, sizes, maturity in the amendment to this DA? Can that be nailed down quite specifically?
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. In this instance, I do believe we can. So what's being proposed essentially as part of this application is to change a condition of existing approval that relates to a landscaping plan for the original development. And so I think if council were of a view to support that change and remove the tree, there would be, in my view, valid grounds to certainly suggest the species of the tree and the size or the maturity of the tree that council would expect it to be replaced with. We'd see that forming part of the modified condition, and that would become something that the applicant would be responsible for implementing.
I'll just get you to spell out the alternate. Are you happy to now, or did you want to email that later?
Yes, just in the alternate would be to the words of the effect of approving the removal of the tree and replacing it with a specified variety approved by city administration based on environmental impacts and keeping it in a native species or something to that effect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Chester.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm thinking actually of a possible compromise, and I'm looking at the report here where it notes that the applicant has not undertaken any regular maintenance of the tree. And another comment here, it is recommended that alternative measures such as regular pruning be undertaken by a qualified professional. Now, what I'm suggesting is rather than out-and-out refusal, I guess it's a question to the director, that we allow that maintenance to be undertaken and then consider the outcome of that and make a decision after a period of time as an amendment, possibly. But a question to the director, please.
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I think essentially that's what the city is suggesting as part of its recommendation. So whilst the recommendation is to refuse the application, that's essentially seeking to retain the tree. In the report, as well as the arborist report that was provided, it did make mention that there hadn't been regular maintenance to the tree and that it would benefit from that regular maintenance. I recognise this evening that through the deputations there may have been some work undertaken. We're happy to follow up with Masonic Care to find out the what and the when around that. But essentially what the report that the officers has prepared seeks to achieve is to recognise that certainly based on the information we received, the tree hadn't received maintenance or care. We felt it would be more appropriate for maintenance and care to be undertaken to the tree to see if that improved the situation rather than it being removed. There wouldn't be an impediment for a further application to be made sometime in the future, but I don't think we could necessarily find a resolution, if you like, through the actual application that provides a stopgap or a period of time to pass to make a decision that we'd formally consider or potentially support its removal down the track. It would essentially be, council would need to make a binary decision as to whether or not to allow the tree to be removed or not, and then council may consider it if a further application is made in the future, and as part of that justification the applicant might demonstrate that they've undertaken the maintenance and care that was suggested and the situation may not have improved if that was their view.
Can I just, sorry to just interrupt for a second, Councillor Chester, because I did see someone in the audience was keen to ask, in the gallery, keen to ask a question, just to explain for the benefit of everyone in attendance. Tonight's just a briefing session. There will be a further opportunity for public questions at the council meeting in 2 weeks' time. So we will take public questions again. Tonight's not a decision-making forum. There will also be statement time, but I suspect that will be oversubscribed, so I wouldn't count on that, but there will be an opportunity for further public questions in 2 weeks' time at the council meeting. Councillor Chester.
Yes, thank you. I'll take the discussion offline and engage with the director to think about an alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Hutton?
Yeah, thank you. Just following on from some of the discussions we've had, or the questions that have been asked before, in the preparation of the alternate suggested by Councillor O'Neill, are we explicitly able to investigate, including reference to the maturity of the tree that's replacing the tree, potentially of a similar maturity, and also the potential relocation of the existing tree? And I asked this a question, not being an expert in trees, but is it possible to have those considerations factored in?
Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. In response to your first question, yes, we can certainly specify the size of the tree. I'm happy to investigate, but it would be my initial thoughts that we wouldn't be able to replace something like for like in terms of size. This tree in question, I think, is 18 odd metres in height. In terms of it being able to be transplanted or relocated, again, I'm happy to seek some specialist advice from within the organisation. But again, my initial thoughts would be it may be of a size in a location that wouldn't allow for it to be transplanted. But as I said, happy to take that question on notice and investigate whether or not that could form part of a condition of approval.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor?
And through you, Mayor, just following on from that, in terms of time, obviously 2 weeks between now and the council meeting, is there a potential need for an alternate method to be used if we are going for an alternate recommendation, whether that be a deferral of the decision or a motion actually to investigate the options? I guess the crux of the question is 2 weeks enough time to explore all the options, or do we potentially need an alternative prepared that actually provides more time?
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm fairly confident that the timeframe that we had will allow us to undertake the investigations that we need to be able to at least provide the information for council to then make a decision in a couple of weeks' time. So to your question, I don't think it needs to be deferred.
Councillor Kingston?
Oh, sorry, just...
Sorry, further question?
Yes, sorry. If I can then just request as an alternate, obviously, if the alternate moved by Councillor O'Neill was not to be successful, that a draft motion be prepared to basically explore the options for a future meeting of council. I just want to make sure, I don't want us to land in a situation where we decide not to agree with the recommendation, but we might need more time to make a final decision. So just as a secondary alternative, if we could just have that prepared, I would appreciate that.
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we can. I think if you're comfortable to, Councillor Hutton, I'll liaise with you offline to work out what the specific reasons behind the deferral or what specific things you might like to investigate. That's probably key for us. I think if council were to consider an alternate along that line, there would probably need to be something quite specific that we'd be needing to investigate.
Thank you. Councillor Kingston?
Thank you. Just some short questions. The first one was page 28. I know that this has been partially covered. It said that the applicant advised that there was no pruning or removal of dead wood. So is it correct, is the city's understanding, that there has been no maintenance done on this tree? The residents seem to be of the opinion there has, but so no recent maintenance or no maintenance altogether?
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure that we've reported on the information that we had at hand, but I also appreciate tonight that the residents have advised that some work had been undertaken. So I think for us, I think that the best way forward is for us to discuss, or at least approach Masonic Care to see what they can advise us, and it may just be a case of timing as to when the arborist report was prepared versus what may have happened since then.
Councillor?
Thank you. And following on, are there any structural risks for this tree to adjoining properties? So I think it was suggested by one of the residents it was 4 metres away from one of the villas. So are there any structural risks from this tree?
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. May I just clarify, structural risks to the buildings or structural risk of the tree?
Oh, to the buildings, to the villas.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. No information that we have been provided would suggest that there's any issues.
Thank you. And then just a further question, and this one goes to the deemed to comply standards that are on page 26. It says that there is to be one small tree per grouped dwelling, and it says that that is currently does not comply with the number of, there are not enough small trees per dwellings on the site. When the DA was first approved, was a discretion given against that element of the deemed to comply standards because this was a significant tree, being over 100 years old? Is that why there was a discretion given against that element?
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. The long story short is no. This is quite an interesting situation where the original approval was approved under a version of the R codes at the time, and we're now considering the changes under a new revised version of the R codes. And so as part of the original approval, there was no requirement for a small tree as a deemed to comply requirement. However, under the current version of the R codes, there is now a deemed to comply requirement for small trees per dwellings. So yeah, the framework has changed slightly. So there wasn't necessarily a discretion provided to retain the mature tree in the absence of small trees, but through the original approval, there was acknowledgement that this particular mature tree would be retained, but others would be lost. And so there was a degree of importance placed on this tree being part of the development outcome.
Councillor?
Thank you, and just the last question. Given that the site currently does not comply with that element of the deemed to comply standards, so there's not enough small trees per grouped dwellings, if this tree is removed and then a small one is put in place, is that an acceptable outcome under the planning framework? Given you could say that having one large tree with a large canopy is in lieu of all of those small trees. So would Councillor O'Neill's alternate motion actually be a permissible outcome under the planning framework?
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I suppose where the officer recommendation sits at the moment is we're of a view that the mature tree should be retained. The replacement with a different tree forms part of the application, and the city's not supportive of that. So I suppose in our view that wouldn't necessarily satisfy the design principles, but it is within the remit of council to make a judgment call to decide that in their view it is appropriate.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. I have a number of questions, if I may, through you, Mr Mayor. In a deputation this evening, it was suggested that the tree is too big for its location. I'd like to give the opportunity to the Director to respond to that particular assertion. Thank you.
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I suppose going back to some of the commentary earlier this evening, as part of the original application, the applicant proposed to include or retain this tree as part of the development, and so that's ultimately what council considered and approved. Through that process, I think it's reasonable to assume that the applicant thought it was an appropriate size tree to be retained in the location that it is and in the proximity it is to the dwellings. Through the arborist report that was submitted as part of the application, the conclusions of the arborist, other than the tree perhaps benefiting from some regular maintenance and pruning, there don't seem to be any fundamental issues with it remaining in that location.
Yes, thank you. Speaking of the arborist report, it appears that the arborist report included in this report recommends that the facility operator plans for regular inspection and maintenance of the tree, that the tree currently provides habitat for bird life, and that the arborist does not recommend removal or replacement of the tree. Please can I ask the Director to confirm or comment on those points? Thank you.
Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I can't recall the specifics, but when I was reviewing the arborist report again this afternoon, it is those sort of recommendations that I recall as well.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Can I ask if the Director or the City is engaged with the Facility Manager to discuss their responsibility to manage this tree, for example, with regard to regular pruning and removal of debris? And if so, what was their response? Thank you.
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. We haven't spoken to the operator directly. We've been engaging with the applicant of the proposal. But having said that, I think based on some of the commentary as part of tonight's deputations, there would be some benefit in the city having a direct conversation with the operator to understand what work they have undertaken and also what they may be able to undertake as a future maintenance program if the tree was to remain.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. I have one final question, if I may, and this relates to the city's general policy with regard to trees. In this location, the city recommendation is for the tree to be retained, but there are elsewhere in the city of Joondalup, there are locations where trees are replaced, removed for other reasons. So just to make sure that everybody's clear on the rationales being applied, and I appreciate this may take a response from more than one director. Given that the city is currently planning to undertake removal and replacement of trees in Joondalup CBD as part of the Leafy City programme, I'd like the relevant director or directors to comment on whether the city's recommendation to retain this tree is consistent with the criteria that the city is applying to replacement of trees in Joondalup CBD. Thank you.
Director Lee.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, if I may start and then perhaps ask Director Klassen to provide anything further. I think at a broad level, the city values its tree canopy and seeks to retain it as much as it can. There are instances where we seek to retain trees for specific purposes or specific reasons, and I think this evening's proposal at 3 Malanda Boulevard is a good example of that. There are other instances where, again, for various reasons, the city would support the removal of trees and potentially the replacement of those with alternatives. In relation to the specific question around this site relative to what might be happening in the Joondalup CBD, one of the fundamental differences here is this is a tree on private property, whereas the trees that I imagine that are being removed or potentially removed throughout the Joondalup CBD are in public spaces. There are different frameworks and guiding requirements depending on if you are in the private realm or in the public realm. But as I said, Mr Mayor, if I may just pass to Director Klassen and he may have some further to add.
Thank you. Director Klassen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you, in response to your question, Councillor Hill, I think Director Lee has covered the difference between the public realm and the private realm. What we've identified as part of the Leafy City program is a general aim to increase the tree canopy within the city of Joondalup and specifically within the public realm. Part of that program, we've developed a program, especially in the CBD, due to the unique nature and layout of the streets. We've done an assessment to see how we can improve the tree canopy within the city centre. And as part of that assessment is removing some inappropriate tree species, but replanting with quite a large number. I think last winter we planted 262 trees, and this winter we're aiming to plant 272, and that's just within the city centre itself. So that's what we're doing in the city centre, different to what's in the private properties.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you. Councillor May.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, given the tree is habitat for shot nesting hollows in it for pinking grey galahs and other birds, is there another option to retain the trunk of a tree and remove the canopy?
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. There are probably a number of options. I think when Council are considering those options and the one that's been suggested in particular, what's been proposed as part of removing the tree is its replacement, and so the applicant has, I suppose, offered to, in removing a tree canopy, plant a new tree to establish a new canopy. That option that you're suggesting, it would potentially retain the habitat or the hollow area, but we'd miss the opportunity to replace the canopy.
Councillor Vinciulo.
Thank you. Through you, just some clarification questions. Firstly, the removal of the tree, just seeking clarification, is resident or city responsible for the removal?
Director Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the resident or the applicant or their appointed person would be responsible for removing the tree. So I guess the point is the city wouldn't be removing the tree.
So, in essence, all costs are not impacted by the city?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's right. The city wouldn't incur costs.
Just one final question. It comes down to precedents. Can I get the city's position on their concerns if this was approved by by council? Does the precedent impact our position on tree and canopy and our green policy to the point where we could see a deluge of, I guess you'd say, residents that have similar situations coming to this city?
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's never really any precedent set in planning decisions. Each planning application is considered on its individual merit and context. I think what would be important in council considering whether to remove the tree or not, or if council are in favour of removing the tree, the reasons behind the support to remove the tree would be quite important. So whilst there's no precedent or no precedent in planning applications, if a reason is broad enough, there could be parallels drawn in future applications. But as I said, really when it comes to the city making an assessment and exercising its judgment, it doesn't necessarily rely on precedent. It does look at each application on its individual merit.
Councillor Chester.
Yes, I just seek to add some clarity, if you will. Look, it is a vexing issue for the residents, and I understand, well, elderly people, it's not good having nuts and branches on the driveway, but going back a while, the current residents are probably not actually aware of this, but when Freemasons Care decided to expand that facility, they asked to remove, to my knowledge, there was 3 very large and healthy chewits that were to be removed. And the quid pro quo, the exchange was that a certain tree would be retained, and that tree has a special status in this issue. And we're talking about the one that's near the building. But if it's too close to the building, it's because the developers of that Freemason Care built the building close to that tree. And so...
Can I just bring you to a question?
Oh, okay. I guess it isn't a question, it was a statement, so I apologise for that. But
thank you.
They're the facts of the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Chester. Further questions, Council? We'll go then to the next item that I brought forward, which is item 13.1.1, proposed LDP 45 Country Club Boulevard, Connelly, and I note that Director Lee has flagged a brief presentation, then I'll open it for questions. Director Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, a lot of what I was going to present this evening's been covered off in deputation and answers to questions, but so I'll keep it quite brief. But what I really wanted to make elected members and the public aware of this evening is that this application is seeking council's approval for a local development plan. A local development plan is a planning instrument used to guide the future development of specific sites and areas. It can't change the zoning of the site, and it doesn't change what the site can and can't be used for. That's already established through our town planning scheme. Approving a local development plan also doesn't grant approval for a specific building or development. Rather, and in response to a question this evening, it creates the criteria and the controls that a future planning application will be assessed against. Local development plans are generally prepared in response to a specific site requirement, and as has already been covered this evening, the specific requirement in this instance is following a scheme amendment that was approved in 2021. Any residential proposal for grouped dwellings or multiple dwellings needs to be preceded by the local development plan. I just also wanted to touch on a couple of items that were raised in this evening's deputations, just for points of clarity. There was a reference in one deputation to a density code of RAC0 being the most intense urban coding, and that's what's in place for this site here. What I wanted to clarify that in the R codes volume 2, the primary controls table does list a series of ascending density codes, and within those density codes they assign certain heights, plot ratios, setbacks that change depending on that density code. When it comes to RAC0, there's no specific height or building setback or plot ratio requirement. Rather, it has a statement that refers to a local planning scheme or a local development plan for these matters. And it's for this reason that the RAC0 density under the R codes is the most comparable or most appropriate density code. It doesn't actually establish any settings, but it acknowledges that those settings will be presented in a local development plan, such as that being considered by council. And then just finally, in relation to consultation, I had the opportunity to respond to a couple of questions in relation to it, but the consultation that we undertook, we wrote to 843 residents and ratepayers, generally within a 500-metre radius. A sign was included on site. We wrote to the Connelly Residents Association, and we also included information on our website. The consultation we undertook was greater than what we're mandated to under the planning and development regulations, but is consistent with our planning consultation local planning policy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Director Lee. Councillors, questions? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. I'll first start saying that everyone is aware that there's already the Policy Committee recommendation, which I put forward to refuse the local development plan. I also will be circulating an amendment to just add some further details and tidy that up. But that'll be circulated to the other council members. My first question is to try and understand the scheme amendment back in 2020. When that scheme amendment was contemplated and that a local development plan was to be a precondition for a development application to be submitted to this site, what was being considered at that time? What type of development was the city and the applicant considering as far as its scale and intensity?
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I can go back to the previous council reports for clarity, but recollection is that there was no specific development outcome contemplated at the time. Scheme Amendment number 6 was broader than just this particular site. It related to all private community purpose zone sites throughout the city. And in relation to the specific requirement for a local development plan, such as the case for Lot 45, it also applies to other sites throughout the city as well. Not many, but it does apply to other sites. So it was more of a broader planning response rather than having a deep understanding of what the intended development outcome would be for the site.
Councillor?
Thank you. And following on to the commentary about the AC0 coding, since the AC0 coding refers then to a local development plan to set the development outcomes on the site of which the LDP relates to, would it then be the case that the AC0 coding will then be applying whatever an applicant approximately then puts into their application in the LDP? So given, as the Director has said, that it doesn't stipulate a building height or scale or densities, that's defined in the LDP. So then in this case, that is then defined by what the applicant then has chosen to put forward.
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think in part, but ultimately as the local development plan, the decision lays with the local government, with the council, and so ultimately I would say the settings of the RAC 0 coding would be whatever the council or the decision maker determine as being those settings. But I do take the point that the applicant has obviously developed a local development plan and has a set of controls that it would seek, but ultimately the local government is the decision maker in this instance, also on advice from the West Australian Planning Commission.
Councillor.
Thank you. And coming back again to the 2020 decision, for that change that occurred at that time to the local planning scheme, were any letters sent to residents in Connelly, and what was the radius? Because looking back at the agenda text in December 2020, it appears that it speaks about a sign being erected on the site, but were there letters? Because it appears that I think there was only about 16 submissions.
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have the detail in front of me, but quite happy to take the question on notice and provide elected members the information on exactly how we consulted.
Thank you. Following on is that within the planning scheme text is that there's two sites within the golf course, one where the actual resort is located and the other one where the golfing section is located. So they're separate lots, and so we have an LDP that's been submitted for one of them. You spoke earlier about the planning decisions don't create a precedent, but in this case, if a local development plan is approved on one of the sites, does that create a context, therefore, say an approval of 14 and 12 stories, that if an LDP was then submitted for the other portion of the golf course, so the golf club building, would that then create a context to then support the approval of another building of a similar height or scale?
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I couldn't preempt what a future council might do with a future application. However, I think what would be quite a significant consideration about any LDP that's sat on the site west of this subject site is its proximity to residential properties just to the west, and so where the context for this particular building or two sites, there is quite a separation between where the development's intended to be constructed and residential properties. The context is a little bit different on the adjoining site there. So I don't believe it would set a precedent. As I said earlier, we would consider each application on its merit, and for me, just as a very preliminary view, there is some differing context in terms of proximity to residential properties.
Thank you. Following on as well, is that when the decision was made in 2020, a residential code was not applied to these community use sites. Could I get some thoughts on commencing a scheme amendment this month to apply a residential code to these two lots? So applying a coding that would then be consistent with the remainder of Connelly. So a low density or medium density code, and given at that stage, it would then also become a seriously entertained planning proposal.
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to provide some information for elected members on that particular matter. There is also some history and some context that I can't quite recall tonight when our scheme, our current local planning scheme, was being considered, and the inclusion of residential land uses and densities on private community purposes was considered by the West Australian Planning Commission. What also I'll provide information for elected members on is I believe there is some SAT case law in seeking to initiate planning processes in direct response to a particular application. So I'll track down that information for elected members as well.
Councillor.
Thank you, and just following on, of course, that there's two lots, and so only one has had one initiated on. Following on as well, as far as the renders and the question of surveillance, there's nothing that binds the developer, so the resort in this case, to construct anything that is similar to what's in the renders. So when there's this discussion of that if we approve this local development plan, that any views, the view outward from the building is going to be obstructed by tree lines, and that it's been strategically placed so that people can't see it. There's nothing actually that binds the developer to a building of this particular type.
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The local development plan, as I mentioned earlier, it does set the guiding framework. What the local development plan does in this instance is it is quite specific in terms of the building footprint and how it, especially for Site A, how it tiers away. But in terms of the actual renders, that wouldn't form part of the local development plan in terms of a requirement. Any subsequent application, it would have its own unique bespoke design. It may be entirely consistent with the renders. It may be something different. But I think what the local development plan does is at least it establishes a building envelope, but not necessarily the set of finishes or construction materials.
Thank you. And following on is that the local development plan itself has a clause which said that this may be varied at any time, and varied at the development application stage. And given that, if, say, the developer wished to apply for further height, say 16 stories or 18 stories, given that it contains a clause which says that it can be varied at that time, does that present a risk?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe it presents that specific wording. I don't believe it presents a greater risk than what would exist if the wording didn't appear on the local development plan. Local development plans as a planning instrument are guiding documents. So I think it was referenced in the deputations this evening. They're not, they don't carry statutory weight. And so whilst they are used as an assessment tool, there is the ability to seek a design outcome that deviates from the local development plan, or at least the provisions of the local development plan. But in doing so, in exercising discretion or judgment to support something that doesn't align with the local development plan, there is established planning law that there needs to be a what's called a cogent reason, so a decent reason to deviate from the plan, but it is possible.
Councillor?
Thank you. And then following on, if the council approves this local development plan and there's a building of similar scale of what's proposed in the renders, so 14 stories, 12 and the 6, what do we believe would be the rough value of that building? Would it be over 5 or over 20 million? And I say that, so what is the likely development pathway? So I think the developer will have the option of, can choose whether to go to the local government, whether to go to the development assessment panel, or whether to go to the significant development assessment units, the SDAU. And what involvement will the council have beyond that? So if the council approves the LDP, then the council, in my opinion, would have little control if the developer chooses to go to the SDAU. Is that correct?
Director?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Without being able to attach a particular value, but in terms of experience about scale of buildings that have recently been received by the city relative to this one, it's likely this building would be in excess of $20 million. That's the threshold that's established for an application to be able to be considered by the significant development pathway. Ultimately, it will be up to the applicant or the developer as to which pathway they choose to take. The planning framework is such these days that an applicant can choose their destiny, if you like, rather than being directed into a particular one. A pathway where the local government is the decision maker is quite self-evident. We would be the ones that make the decision on the application, be that council or the officers, depending on the delegations. A development assessment panel pathway the local government is what's called the responsible authority, and so we undertake the assessment, we undertake the consultation, we prepare a report and recommendation for the panel, but ultimately it's a panel that's established and convened by state government. There is 2 local government members by the way of 2 local councillors that sit on that panel of 5, and then the significant development pathway. The local government and council is a further step removed, if you like. The Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, which is the state government's planning agency, are responsible for undertaking the assessment and consultation. As a local government, we are invited to make a submission on the application, but the decision itself is made by the West Australian Planning Commission or the Statutory Planning Committee, which is a committee formed under the West Australian Planning Commission.
Councillor?
Thank you. I just thought I'd conclude and say, yes, I will be circulating an amendment just to add to the refusal which has already been recommended through the Policy Committee, and I'd encourage councillors to take up the invitation from residents to visit the site.
Thank you. Further questions? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The minutes of the Policy Committee meeting indicate that 4 of the 7 committee members voted against the officer's recommendation, and that the reason for departure was given that the development is inconsistent with the local planning development process. Please can I ask the director to specifically comment on whether the proposed development is inconsistent with the local planning development process, and if so, why does the city recommend support of the draft local development plan? Thank you.
Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The process that the application's following in the city's view is correct and or is at least being followed as required. There's a scheme provision that requires the development of a local development plan prior to the construction of any grouped or multiple dwelling. The application seeks to respond to that scheme provision. The process that's been undertaken to date for the application has conformed with the planning and development regulations. So in the city's view, currently the process is being followed as required.
Thank you. I note that the draft local development plan is required to be considered by council and also requires endorsement by WAPC. Please can I ask the director to clarify the process that will be followed by WAPC in the event that the draft local development plan is not supported by council? Thank you.
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. In the event the council don't support the local development plan, it wouldn't be referred to the West Australian Planning Commission. So effectively the proposal would stop there, and it would be up to the applicant as to whether or not they wanted to seek a review of council's decision in the State Administrative Tribunal. The reason the West Australian Planning Commission is involved in this instance is there are some specific parts of the R codes that the local development plan seeks to deviate from. There are parts of the R codes that councils are able to support changes to, and there are some that we need the Commission's support to be able to approve. This is one of those instances, and so it's almost a case of we need to make a decision, then we seek WAPC's endorsement, and then we bring it back to council for a final decision. But in the event council don't want to proceed, there's nothing for us to ask the WAPC.
Thank you. That just leads me to one final question, if I may. Are there likely to be any other implications for the city if the city's recommendation to support the draft local development plan is voted down by council? For example, what could the proponent do in those circumstances, and what level of legal and financial exposure could the city be open to in those circumstances? Thank you.
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the applicant would have a right of appeal to the State Administrative Tribunal. Depending on the nature of the reasons for refusal, or depending on the nature of the decision rather, the city may need to engage external consultants to represent council's decision. That comes at a cost, but at the moment it's unknown as to whether or not the extent of what that appeal's like, if it's something that's able to be mediated without too many sessions, or if it was something where the two parties aren't able to agree, and there needs to be a determination by the State Administrative Tribunal the amount of time and money that goes into a SAT matter can vary depending on the time invested.
Further questions? Thank you. Next item, the last of the deputations, being item 13.1.3, proposed amendment to LPS 3, lot 55, number 15 Delar Street, Joondalup. Any questions on this item? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. The additional uses, so warehouse and storage, is it possible to just have bulky goods showrooms instead of just warehouse and storage?
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it could be. What's gone through my mind, and perhaps I'd like to take the question on notice and provide some further information, is whether or not that would significantly change the proposal itself, and whether or not it would be more appropriate if council weren't supportive of half of the application or one particular land use, whether or not that's tantamount to a choosing not to initiate it. So if you don't mind, Mayor, I'll take that question on notice and give that some further thought.
Thank you. Further questions?
Thank you. Following on from that, is it possible, if this amendment passes, that the developer and the owner of the site could just build a warehouse storage? There's nothing to commit them to, again, the renders where the front of it was bulky goods showrooms and then the remainder of the site was warehouse storage?
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. The warehouse storage and the bulky goods showroom are two independent land uses. So essentially what, if the scheme amendment goes through as requested, effectively there would be two additional use classes that that the landowner could develop. They could choose to develop both of them. They could choose to develop one and not the other.
Councillor.
Thank you. And then following on from that, it's sort of speculation about the economic potential of the site. Do we think, if this passes, that it is likely this will be a site which will be, say, the majority of the site on proportion would be a warehouse storage, and then there'd be a small bulky goods showroom at the front? And I say that as well because the proponent's planner, when he had the pictures in his deputation, one of them was of the Storage King building. So if the economic potential of this site, does it more lean towards warehouse storage, and will it likely then, if it's then a split development of warehouse storage and bulky goods, is it likely this is more on just an economic potential to be warehouse storage at this time?
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Somewhat like the comments from the deputation this evening, it's not known to us at the moment, so I couldn't provide you any direction one way or the other.
Thank you. And then just lastly, I know Councillor Hamilton Prime spoke to me during the week about this, and she wished to have an alternate to revert back to the officer's recommendation. I just thought I'd flag that since she's not here.
I think that can merely be foreshadowed. I don't think you need an alternate to that effect. Also noting, I think consultants remained, although behind in the lectern, they're also free to email elected members in response to any questions raised on the way through briefing, as are the previous ones who'd also remained. Further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Just one question. I note that the Policy Committee recommendation differs from the officer's recommendation. Please can I request the Director to specifically comment on and address any concerns that the City may have with regard to this departure from the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Director Lee.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think it was raised through the deputation that this is essentially the only undeveloped lot in this part of our Joondalup city centre. And I also made some reference earlier to, in relation to precedent and how the city's planning team treats that. I think essentially why the city officers don't believe the scheme amendment should be initiated effectively comes down to the framework we have in front of us in terms of assessing planning proposals. The Joondalup Activity Centre plan at the moment has an aspiration for this site to be developed as one of the more intense styles of development and activity in the city centre, although I do acknowledge that the surrounding development and land uses don't align with that currently. That's certainly what our aspiration and ambition is. So in terms of your question as to any future issues that may arise, I don't think it would necessarily be broad. It would just be perhaps the opportunity lost on the vacant site and what the city's currently trying to achieve in that part of the city centre.
Thanks. That does lead me to one further question, if I may. Just seeking some clarification on why the adjacent lots in that general area are as they are and not consistent with the aspiration of the city as just described. Thank you.
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Quite happy to take that question on notice and provide some information in the elected member briefing notes in relation to a structure plan amendment that Council considered a few years ago. But the long story short is we have been receiving information that the market, essentially broadly, the market isn't there for the style of development we're hoping to achieve in that location at the current time. And so there seems to be a bit of a disconnect at the moment in terms of what we're hoping to see long term versus what the current market's prepared to deliver.
Further questions? Councillor Chester.
Yes, thank you. Is it normal for this kind of development, that is warehouse storage and bulky goods storing, to be exempt from minimum building height requirements?
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. It's not typical, but I understand why it's the request in this instance. So in our Joondalup Activity Centre, and particularly the city centre precinct, which this site's located in, we do include height provisions, both a maximum in some instances, but also a minimum. We do have a minimum here from memory of about 4 stories. I would imagine that is why the applicant is seeking to not be bound to the minimum height requirements of the city centre precinct, because a bulky goods showroom / warehouse is not typically developed at 4 stories.
Further questions? Councillor
Hutton. Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Is the city aware of any other premises or businesses within this same area that is also struggling to get tenants because of the zoning requirements?
Director Lee.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I don't recall being contacted by anyone that's having difficulty finding tenants. We have had meetings over the years or approaches or contact over the years from other landowners that have had development aspirations that haven't aligned with the activity centre plan, and so they hadn't been able to press on with those development activity. I do also note that in the same precinct, as elected members would be aware, there has been a business that has closed down in one of the, effectively what is a warehouse property in the city centre precinct.
Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. I would be interested if, on notice, we could be provided with just any context around other businesses in the area, or units in the area which may be vacant, and whether or not the zoning might be part of the issue. Obviously noting that we are looking at a full review down the track, but I think it's important that we look at this holistically and make sure, so if that could be provided on notice, I'd appreciate it.
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, we can provide information that we can track down in terms of what we understand to be vacancies. We can also include some information on known development approvals as well. There was reference to one earlier this evening, so we can provide elected members some detail on that as well.
Just one final question, if I may, through you, Mayor. I know there's been comments here about removing the minimum height requirement. Now, obviously, that minimum height requirement is about increasing the density. I'm just wondering if the city would give any consideration for actually a maximum height requirement when it comes to things like storage, noting the new multi-storage storage facility and whether or not that would be deemed to be a acceptable use of this site in terms of the long-term use of the site, and whether or not we might actually look to put a cap on it, if not a minimum, or a cap under certain uses, whether or not that's possible.
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think it would be something that would be difficult to achieve on a site-by-site basis, so in terms of specific to this particular proposal. I think it's also something that would need to be given some thought through a broader review that the city is undertaking. Typically, when it comes to setting development standards, that is around things like height, where we're looking to establish a particular character for an area or a particular built form outcome, rather than restricting or requiring minimum heights for particular land uses. So I can see some particular challenges for that, but I think the most appropriate time to do that would be as part of a broader review that the city's committed to undertaking.
Sorry, Mayor, just one final one, if I may. Just on this point, obviously my understanding is that there are some businesses which have been developed to a standard which was the previous zoning. We're looking to amend the zoning here. Would it be at all possible to just provide a one-off exemption for a development so that after that development takes place, any future developments are conforming with the same zoning requirements as the surrounding businesses? Is that an actual option, so we don't have different zoning requirements for different premises? Is it possible just to provide a one-off exemption for one development, or for the initial development, and for future developments to default back to the zoning requirements of the surrounding area?
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think what's being proposed goes some way to achieving that. So this proposal is confined to the single site, and it's looking to add 2 additional land uses to what's already approved there. So it becomes quite specific to the site, not necessarily to the development or the future original development, but until something broader happens to the precinct, if you like, to change the zoning, it will be quite confined to what it's already permitted to do, plus those 2 additional land uses. And then what I would see happening in the future, potentially as part of a broader review, if the outcome of that review is there's a different direction that the city and council choose to take for this precinct, then that would apply across the board, and so there would be that consistency re-established.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? I'll return then to the beginning of the agenda and work my way through sequentially. Item 12.1, Development and Subdivision Applications 2025, March 25. Any questions on this item? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. My question is about the subdivision for 95 Woodvale Drive. I noticed the city has said that they do not support this. Has the scheme amendment progressed with the Planning Commission, and were there any amendments to that scheme amendment, given I think that this subdivision application was trying to be lodged before that, before there was a conclusion to the scheme amendment process?
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, our understanding, and I did have a look earlier this afternoon, there's nothing on our records to show that the scheme amendment's progressed.
Councillor.
Thank you. And as far as, are there any amendments being sought to the scheme amendment from the Commission?
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe so, but I'll take that question on notice and just clarify for elected members.
Councillor.
Thank you. And could we have a copy of the submission which the city provided to the Planning Commission, not with the recommendation not to support the subdivision?
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I can provide that in the briefing notes for elected members.
Thank you.
Further questions? Item 12.3, objection to the city's decision to refuse an application to keep a beehive at 8 Ashmore Way, Sorrento. Any questions on this item? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. Could I have a copy of the actual letter of the objection to the council's decision? I know it's quoted copiously in the report, but I'd like to see the whole letter if I'm to make a decision to not support it.
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, happy to provide that in the briefing notes for elected members.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you. And it seems to be that there were 2 residents which had health concerns, one of them which had a severe allergy, which is reported in the agenda. Could we confidentially in the briefing notes just have on the map there located which residence that is?
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I can identify that confidentially for elected members.
Thank you. Councillor.
Well, I can see there's a bit of concern about that. It's just because in the notes it says about that is one of the determinative factors. I just want to understand how close the residence is.
I understand.
To the proposed location of the beehive.
I guess my concern, and unfortunately experience has taught me this, is that if that's to be made available, it's better to be made available by, like, not distributed, but sort of made available for viewing.
That's fine with me.
Thank you. Councillor Kingston. Further questions? Councillor Vinciulo.
Thank you. Through you. Just seeking some insight into, do we have any previous cases of a similar circumstance that we can reference? And if so, can we provide some back history? Because this is a unique one.
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, it is not something that comes up very often. There was a state administrative tribunal matter that the city was involved in some years ago. What I'll do is I'll track down that SAT decision for elected members and make it available so they can review the background there.
Amazing. Thank you.
Further questions? Item 12.4, execution of documents. Any questions on this item? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. Could I just clarify that the withdrawal of caveats that relate to the Silk Chime properties, does that relate exclusively to the rates dispute which was heard, or does that relate to the planning caveats which are on those lots?
Director Humphrey.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that relates directly to the outstanding rates balances only.
Thank you.
Further questions? I will skip 12.5, noting that we still have some people in the gallery, and come back to that at the end of the agenda. Item 12.6, status of council decisions. Any questions on this item? Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in relation to something with that I put forward a motion for, which was the responsible information sharing. I think that I can recall that I saw that it was supposed to be coming to council this month, yet I don't see it. Could I get some follow-up on that, please?
Acting CEO.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll take the question on notice and provide the information in the packs.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Aftis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Questions through yourself. Page 57, the reference to animal exercise areas. Previous month we were advised that they would come through to the strategy session for May 6. That didn't happen, and now it's down to first quarter of 25-26, so somewhere between July and September. Could we get some clarification on anticipated timing and why that was delayed, please?
Director Klassen.
Through Mr Mayor, firstly, the delay occurred due to the volume of responses we received, and unfortunately the team compiling that and all the responses was not able to get that ready for us to bring it back to a May strategy session. We are currently aiming for the first strategy session, so the one in July.
Councillor.
Thank you. Next one, in terms of the Black Boy Park renaming, even in the current papers it says it's going to be at this May council meeting. Just seeking clarification on that, please.
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Not dissimilar to the response just provided by Director Klassen in relation to the dog exercise area, there was a significant community consultation feedback that we received from that. We are at the end of that. We are also re-engaging with Landgate now that we're at the back end of the process. So we weren't able to present it to this May round of council, but our intent is to present it to the June round.
My understanding is we're just waiting on some more Landgate feedback ahead of June. Yep, correct. Councillor Raftis.
Thank you. Page 63, regarding the electors meeting in terms of coming to, don't forget that one, I'll skip that one. Page 65, in terms of workers' compensation insurance, there's no reference to any timing of that from October 2024 when it was raised. Are we able to put a date in there as when we anticipate any activity and progress on that one, please?
Director Parry.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you for the question. I'll need to take that one on notice and provide you with further information in relation to that timeframe. I agree, timeframe should be included within this register.
Further questions? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. It's in relation to page 63, and it's the request that I made at the Policy Committee on the 2nd of September for a report to be prepared about activity centres for strategic secondary and district specialised activity centres and where there was outstanding structure plans for those activity centres. It just says for the action taken, the city is progressing the relevant actions in accordance with the council decision. Do we know when that report will come to the Policy Committee or when it will come before council?
Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I will take the question on notice and provide some specifics, but it is something that we are aware of, but we need to get through some other priorities beforehand, but it is something that we're committed to providing, and I think also council resolution as part of the annual general meeting also requests us to do something similar, but I'll take the question on notice and just provide some specific estimates on timeframes.
Councillor.
Thank you. And just following on that, the timeframes, have we received any applications for either significant developments within any of those activity centres, or has anyone commenced the structure planning process with the city?
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. We haven't received any recently. The only one that I can think of that council would be aware of is the significant development application at the Warwick Secondary Centre, but none further that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Further questions? Item 12.7, minutes of regional council meeting. Questions on this item? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. My question is on page 97. I don't know if one of the officers can answer this, but it appears that the budget discussion meetings were, budget discussion was guillotined by Councillor Vernon, so that the discussions were cut short, and the meeting only went for about 20 minutes. So at what point in the debate did that occur? Did that occur at the start? It just seems awfully quick to approve a budget worth tens of millions.
Director Klassen.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I unfortunately was not at the meeting as that was the same date as the budget workshop, but my understanding from Councillor Fishwick that was fairly early in the debate when that procedural motion was moved.
Thank you.
Item 12.8, local government elections. Questions on this item? Item 12.9, corporate business plan. Questions on this item? Councillor Raftis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A few questions. Page 274, the PAW lighting, Doveridge to Ripley, Glengarry to Ripley, just wondering if we could get some update on that, and has it actually commenced?
I'm just letting Director Klassen find the page. Director.
Through Mr Mayor, sorry, Councillor Rafters, you're referring to Doveridge, Glengarry and Doveridge to Ellerslie. Those projects have commenced. They're currently around 15% completed and currently scheduled to be completed by the end of May.
Thank you. On page 288, the Sorrento Surf Club, in terms of the detailed design, will that come back to council for review and approval?
Director Klassen.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll take that question on notice and provide a bit of an update on where we are and the timelines on how we're proposing to deliver that.
Councillor Rafters.
Thank you. Page 278, Gibson Park UAT has a budget of 170 with actual 162, but in the financial reports 569, it refers to the UAT being 60k variance negative to budget. Just trying to understand how that can happen.
Director.
Sorry, through Mr Mayor, I just need to find that page.
I might go Director Humphrey.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the report in front of you does also include commitments, whereas the financial reports will only cover off payments where the invoice has been approved and paid to the supplier. I'm happy to take that question on notice, though, and provide a reconciliation of the two.
Director Klassen, did you have anything further?
I think the variance would be year-to-date budget versus overall budget, and I think it's just a phasing difference.
But we'll confirm that on notice, Councillor Rafters, in the pack.
Yeah, it could, because the project was supposed to finish by 31st of March, therefore year-to-date should include the entire project, not partial. But happy to have that, and clarification as to how it can be a timing difference would be appreciated. Page 226, in terms of project Axiom, says it's on budget. Could we get confirmation that includes reference to all invoices received, not necessarily approved, that the project is on budget?
Director Humphrey.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'll have to take that question on notice and provide information in the packs.
Councillor Rafters. Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. My question is to page 65 of the agenda, so the dog management plan. If the milestones are being changed, so Q4 was going to be finalised the development of the plan, now Q4 is going to be progressing the development of the plan. When do we expect the plan to be finalised and presented to the community?
Director Klassen.
Through you, Mr Mayor, as per my previous response to Councillor Rafters, the consultation is proposed to be presented to elected members at a strategy session in July, and based on the feedback will determine the timing of the final report to be provided for elected members' consideration.
Councillor.
So is that likely to be before the end of the year for the final report?
Director.
Through Mr Mayor, based on the caretaker period, most probably not before November, December, but that will, as I said, depend on the feedback received from councillors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 12.10, review of delegated authority. Questions on this item? Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. I'd just like to flag that I'm not sure whether it's going to be an amendment or an alternate. There's just a couple of changes to some of the delegated authorities, which happy to work with city officers on that.
Thank you. I think just please give notice as soon as possible, and also to council colleagues as well. Further questions? Item 12.11, list of payments made during the month of March 2025. Questions on this item? Councillor Chester.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm looking at attachment page 476, and I'm querying the cost of fencing to the tune of $24,000 plus. presumably for the period of the Valentine's concert. I wonder if the Director could just give some clarity on that expense.
Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. It does appear to be the entire cost of the fencing for the Valentine's concert. There is considerable cost in setting up that temporary fencing, but I will check the invoices and provide more information to elected members in the packs.
Further questions? 12.13, card transactions for the month of March. Any questions on this item? Councillor Raftis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question regarding $3,900 for the fabric printer as to the range of T-shirts, what they were actually for and how that fits in with the city strategy, please.
Director Humphrey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll have to take that question on notice and review the invoices. I'll provide the information in the packs.
Item 12.14, Community Funding Program 24-25 Round 2. Questions on this item? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to request that elected members be provided with details in the pack for each of the recommended small grant applications, as these details are not presented in the report. I request this information as it is useful for elected members to be aware of community groups that are planned recipients of small grant funding from the city. Is that possible? Thank you.
Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we'll provide the information in the packs.
Thank you. Councillor Raftis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just curious if we could get some comment. The motion to the ocean one was not recommended for approval, given it appeared to be an operating cost. Given it seems to be the writing one is a repetitive process, how does that not appear to be an operating cost as well, if that's similar to what they've run previously?
Director Humphrey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Raftis, can I get you to raise the question? I'm not sure I quite understood the information you were seeking.
The Perth Peter Cowan Riders Centre grant application appears to be similar to one that they received funding for previously. So I'm just curious as to why that's not regarded as a repetitive operating cost if it's something that they appear to be doing on a regular basis.
Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the clarification. The panel, when they consider the applications, they look at things like individual events, not as ordinary operating, whereas uniforms or general operating equipment that would be expected for the ongoing operation of the organisation are. But I will take the question on notice and I will query with the panel members and provide information in the packs on Friday.
Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to ask that on the evening of the council meeting, we vote on these separately as well.
You'll have to remind me then, but yes. Further questions? 12.15, Burns Beach Cafe Restaurant, major land transaction. Questions on this item, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. It's my observation that North Ward residents are well informed regarding the previous 2020-21 community consultation on the Burns Beach Coastal Node Concept Plan, which included plans for the Burns Beach restaurant. That consultation received 464 valid responses and demonstrated overwhelming support from the community. I am coming to a question. The 2024 community consultation related to the Burns Beach Major Land Transaction Business Plan and received 30 valid responses. The city's advised that many of these responses appear to be duplicated responses. It is clear that residents that support the overall coastal node concept and the restaurant concept understood the purpose of the 2024 community consultation and did not have particular views on the business plan. Can I ask the Director to advise how many of the 30 responses were directly relevant to the business plan rather than to the issues that were relevant to the 2021 community consultation? Thank you.
Director.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I don't have the exact number to hand. I will have to review the submissions received and provide the exact answer. In general, most of the submissions related to issues surrounding the business plan, not the business plan itself. That is not uncommon when we advertise business plans. people will quite often respond to how they feel about the development itself. So that in itself is not unusual. I do only recall 3 or 4 that are directly related to objecting to the business plan itself.
Yes, thank you. And just finally, can I ask the Director to clarify the City's general approach with regard to responses to the 2024 community consultation that have no direct relevance to the business plan? Thank you.
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the City would approach it that we've consulted on the business plan itself, as we're required to do under the Act, and we would usually only base our recommendations on what we're required to consult upon. However, it's up to the Council is free to view the consultation as it pleases.
Further questions? Item 12.16, tender for the Malanda Boulevard pedestrian and cyclist bridge. Questions on this item? Just a quick question from myself then, Director Klassen. As you have outlined, and I'll just go page 112 of the report, there's a slight variance in the recommended tenderer from our usual practice. You've outlined, I think, good reasons on page 112, but if you could just, I suppose, expand on why you've made the recommendation here that you have, or why the panel has. Director Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our general predisposition is when we are looking at tenders, once we're past the qualitative assessment, we would normally recommend the cheapest tenderer. In this particular case, the difference is approximately $190,000 or less than 10%. So we then started looking at the risk of price cost overruns, and we believe that the submission by DB Cunningham presents less risk of a cost overrun to the City in the longer term.
Thank you. Councillor Chester.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would love to have an elevation of the bridge to show to local residents to keep them enthused about the project. There was one other question. I'll have to let it go.
Well, while you think on that, I'll just glance over at our communications team. Suddenly heard me say their name. We'll, assuming if this passes, we'll work on something to that effect, I think, as a social media and another one to distribute, and perhaps in the voice column as well, because I think you're right, there's a lot of interest and some design drawings would be good to include. So, yeah, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. On a similar vein, and I think probably before the council meeting, can elected members be provided with sample, schematic and general arrangement drawings of the final design of the proposed bridge? Clearly, the tendering companies must have been provided with a full suite of drawings as part of the tender process. Thank you.
Director?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, we can provide that information.
Yeah, and just for clarification, I think it'd be helpful to see those drawings before we are asked to comment on the decision. And then finally, please can I request confirmation of the contributions towards the construction, both from Main Roads WA and from any recent election commitments that are likely to be realised? Thank you.
Director Klassen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, currently we have $1 million from Main Roads WA confirmed and $2.3 million federal funding through the Thriving Suburbs grants confirmed. That's not an election commitment. So currently the project will be fully funded for me by external funding. Have to just qualify that, need to check with the funding bodies what their requirements are with regard to the funding itself and any co-contribution from the City.
Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. Very similar comments as Councillor Hill. It would be good to see the full drawings, but also, are there any public concepts of this bridge that have been any previous agendas?
There certainly were drawings at ward budget meetings considered them along the way. Director Klassen?
Through Mr. Mayor, I don't believe there's any drawings in the public arena, bar if somebody downloaded the tender documents, that would be available. As the acting CEO has indicated, we're happy to provide those drawings to elected members. Must probably just add it as a link to the document for your perusal.
I think it's a good point. I'm very keen to get the drawings and the design out and expectation management, so it's a point well made from a number of elected members. Councillor Kingston?
Is it all right if we just append them as attachments if they're already been public as part of the tender process?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we wouldn't normally attach them to a public document until the tender's finalised, in case there's any further requests for information, variations from council. So it's not our normal practice. My preference would be to make the information available to council, and if the tender is accepted, then we could make public statements the day after the council meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 12.17, tender for Prince Regent Park, new club facilities and toilet refurbishment. Questions on this item?
Mr Mayor, did you skip one then?
No. Miranda Boulevard and then Prince Regent Park. 12.16 to 12.17. Questions on Prince Regent? If not, item 12.18, provision of basketball facilities. We do have a presentation from Director Klassen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a short update. The purpose of this report is for Council to know the progress of the DEWA regulations, guidelines for the provision of outdoor community basketball facilities, and to consider development of a Council policy or guidelines for the management of these facilities. As indicated in the report, there's been a number of decisions by Council about provision of basketball facilities within the city since 2021. In late 2022, DEWA released the draft guidelines called Minimising Noise Impact from Outdoor Community Basketball Facilities, seeking comment from affected parties, including local government. However, withdrew the proposed guidelines on 22nd of February 2023, leaving it to local government to continue to manage these type of facilities. It is the city's understanding that the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation is not likely to reconsider its position at this time and publish new guidelines to assist local governments in the provision of outdoor basketball facilities. It should be noted that the provision of outdoor basketball facilities is not exempt from requirements of the Environmental Protection Noise Regulations 1997, and the city has no option but to ensure these requirements are taken into consideration when planning for and designing new basketball facilities. The city has investigated development of its own policy or guidelines as requested by Council, but considers this not to be practical, as each potential site has its own specific variables that impact noise generation, which would render a guideline document unusable, as application of general guidelines would result in false result for a specific site context. As such, it's proposed to consider provision of outdoor basketball facilities during the annual budget development process, which will enable the city to undertake the necessary pre-assessments of potential sites and develop a prioritisation matrix, taking into account equitable distribution of these type of facilities across the city of Joondalup. Happy to take questions, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'll go Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you. I note that the officer's recommendations do not specifically identify that an environmental noise assessment must be made prior to confirming the location and design of any new outdoor basketball facilities. Noting that failure to adequately consider noise previously resulted in the removal of the newly installed facilities in Braden Park, I would like to ask if an additional recommendation can be added to ensure that the impact of noise on nearby residential properties is always assessed prior to the city proposing new outdoor basketball facilities. This could be as an extension of recommendation number 3 or as a new recommendation number 4. And I'm not aware if this actual agenda item has resulted from a particular elected member's notice of motion, but if it has, I'd be happy to work with whoever that is to come up with an alternative. Thank you.
Director.
Happy to consider that, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hutton.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. Noting the shortage of basketball facilities across Perth, and also the need for more facilities like this, has the city at all worked with the Department of Education around making their basketball facilities accessible and bookable to members of the public outside of schooling hours?
Who wants? Director Klassen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you, The city has not specifically worked with schools in developing this report, although I know in the past there were discussions with schools about shared use agreements on certain facilities that is in place within the city of Joondalup. However, most of the schools are now moving towards fencing the school grounds, and as such, some of the previously available facilities are now no longer available for the general public to use.
Councillor Hutton?
Yeah, I guess just on notice, I would be interested in being provided some information on that. Just obviously want to make sure that we're not duplicating things unnecessarily, but just around the communication that's happened before and what we might do in the future to make sure that these facilities that are paid for by residents and ratepayers through taxes are accessible.
Just for some context, many years ago now, I did a call for a report into some of those facilities as well, which did come up, try and find, that was more in the context of use of school ovals, say, like Padbury Senior High School ovals were the prime example, which just lie fallow. It didn't lead anywhere, not because of lack of effort from the city. It was probably more, there wasn't much interest, and it's certainly something worth looking at again, but we have looked at previously as well.
Thank you.
Further questions, Councillor Kingston?
Thank you. I know the city says we're not progressing with the policy, and recommendation 3 says that we're supporting the consideration of new facilities during the annual budget process. As just a measuring stick, how will the city be looking at new basketball facilities? Is there going to be an indicative setback which the city will use, say 40 metres, 50 metres for new facilities?
Director Klassen?
Through Mr. Mayor, the city would initially look at the parks classification, and if the type of facilities are supported in that parks classification, obviously look at the proximity to residential dwellings. And in the report, we have provided some indicative distances that we'll consider, and then look at how do we create a recreational hub, make it part of a recreational hub, and we've been successful in that. Specifically at the Duncraig Adventure Hub, and now also looking at the Whitfords Park West redevelopment, doing as part of a recreational hub. So those are the aspects that we will consider as part of the prioritisation and assessment of sites, but then also look at undertaking specific noise assessments to make sure it complies.
And then, through the chair. And then as far as the renewal of these basketball facilities, take for example the ones in Kingsley Craigie, which are 20 metres away from the residences, those seem to me unlikely that they will comply with the noise regulations under any interpretation. So are some of these just going to be struck out when it comes to renewal?
Director?
Through Mr. Mayor, with the existing facilities, those facilities are well utilised by the community and well accepted by the community, so one would hope that at the time of renewal, we'll just renew in the current position. As soon as you start moving it, we'll need to ensure compliance.
Councillor Kingston?
And as far as if there was one resident in Craigie or Kingsley at one of these parks that lives adjacent to this, said it didn't comply with the noise regulations, what would the city then do? Is that enough to start the process to say they should be removed? Just on the face of it, it looks like they probably won't comply. So I'm just worried that if we then renew the assets, and then just one complaint can then trigger to then say, well, these aren't compliant with the noise regulations, or do we just try and front it out?
Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've detailed in the report what we do in those instances where we have had complaints in the past. To date, we've been able to manage those as detailed in the report under the other risk information. So we get the EHO Environmental Health Office to investigate. We'll look at potential changes to the type of material, the backboards, etc., and work with the residents. And as I've indicated to date, that has been successful.
Thank you.
I'll just say I'm happy with Councillor Hill's alternate, which he's proposing. I think it covers some of the concerns.
Not looking for comments. And certainly not looking for people to lead voting intent. Councillor Kingston. Councillor May.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On page 124 of the report, I just want to confirm, so the city has, it says has either 3-on-3 or 1-on-1 pads at 47 of public open spaces, so I assume that's 47 basketball pads throughout the city. Can I confirm, apart from Braden Park, which seemed to be more about people just not wanting teenagers and kids in their park, has there been a number of complaints from any of the other facilities around the city?
Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, we have received complaints, as I've indicated to a question to Councillor Kingston. Those complaints were not as many as we received at Braden Park, and the investigations after the complaint received was well received by the residents.
Further questions? Councillor Raftis?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, in terms of the recommendation that it not be a policy, could the, given some of our other comparative policies we have in existence can be very short, page or two long, could not a policy be drafted that considers some basic processes that the city needs to engage in when considering basketball courts, so that at least then there's an awareness of the issues, and certainly compliance with noise being one of those policy, that need to be complied with.
Director?
Through Mr Mayor, we can certainly do that, but we believe we can achieve that through a resolution of council and don't need a council policy to achieve the same outcome. And as such, with potential changes that might achieve the same outcome.
Further questions? Item 13.1.2, draft new residential development local planning policy. Questions on this item? 13.1.4, LPS 3, report of review. Any questions on this item? Item 13.1.5, I'll just kindly ask you to please, or is that the wrong one? Councillor Hutton, is this the one that you declared a proximity interest on?
Yeah, 13.1.5, yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Any questions on this item? Please go collect Councillor Hutton. Thank you. You might be taking advantage of the exit. 13.1.6, proposed animals local law. Questions on this item? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. It follows on to a discussion I had with Director Lee about the 9-metre setback for chicken coops from houses, and that related to chemicals which were in the soil. Is there another way which we can deal with this issue, given that that chemical risk related to properties which were prior to about 1980, and a lot of the city was built after that time? So just having a blanket rule appears to be quite stringent. Is there another way we can notify people of that risk rather than having a prohibition in the local law?
Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Happy to give it some more thought and include some information in the briefing papers. One of the things that is challenging is that, as you mentioned, the 9-metre setback relates to how properties were previously treated for termites using organochlorines. I think that was stopped in about the mid-80s, and we have a variety of housing stock in terms of age, and so I will have to give it some thought as to how we could find an alternate way that also still achieves the intent, certainly for some properties that would be subject to the historic setback provision.
Thank you. And following on from that, do we have any understanding of which suburbs are at risk for organochlorides?
Director. I just need you to switch your microphone off after asking questions, please, Councillor Kingston. And I have you down as next, Councillor Chester. Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Not specifically, however, as mentioned, I think the use of organochlorines was phased out by about the mid-80s, and so arbitrarily it would be, I would anticipate it would be houses developed before then.
Councillor?
Is there any way to have some sort of notification when properties change hands, so when there's that conveyancing process, rather than just having a title notification on properties which are before that date? Because I'm just thinking no one reads the local laws. They're not going to know anyway. So if they're putting in a chicken coop and it's, you know, not 9 metres away, they'll be breaching the local law, but then the intent of it is around public health, not even nuisance.
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I think it would be best if I take that one on notice and just give it some thought as to how people could be advised or become aware or notified of the situation.
And thank you. Following on from that, if the setback distance is to be reduced from 9 metres down to another distance, what could the administration give some thought to what would then be appropriate to then manage nuisance concerns? So say that might be a 4 metre setback or 2 metre setback from a boundary fence, because I imagine there might be a dual purpose of how this is enforced.
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, happy to give that some thought, but you are correct. The 9 metre setback does achieve a couple of objectives. One, in terms of providing the separation distance from the past use of organochlorines, but also puts a distance between properties and the chicken coop from again, a public health point of view.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Chester.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. The question is, has the city at any stage attempted to engage with the managers of the Yellowgonga Original Park, namely DBCA, to gauge their appetite for including, or possibly including, any of their environmentally sensitive areas, such as where they're breeding up quenda or southern brown bandicoot, including sections of the regional park to be included in the city's cat prohibition area?
I'll go to Director Parry maybe on that one. Director Lee.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I'll take the question on notice, but happy to follow up with DBCA in between the briefing session and council as well, to find out what that appetite might be and how that might be able to be accommodated.
Thank you. Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. And sorry to not answer this, but ask this before. Could I also have some thought given to including Quarry Park on the list of high priority natural areas for the cat determination? So my recollection is it's not on the list.
Director.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'll have a look at that. I just don't have the list at hand, but I can check whether or not it's on, and if not, I can give some consideration as to the rationale we've factored into including the parks that we have and how Quarry Park sits against that rationale.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 13.1. Councillor Raftis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to flag a potential change to come through to for this to take the number of chickens permitted back to 12 from the 6 currently put in under this change.
Thank you. Just checking, Director Parry, can we just, that's fine to be done by amendment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, we can do that by amendment.
Further questions? 13.1.7, attendance at events, council policy review. Questions on this item? 13.1.8, electronic attendance at council and committee meetings. Questions on this item? And 13.1.9, review of the purchasing council policy. And I'll just ask I know Director Humphrey is giving a presentation on this, but I will ask Deputy Mayor if he can fill in for me for a sec. I'm just going to take a comfort break. Please, Director Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, Council is required to have a purchasing policy for purchase under $250,000, and this must be reviewed once every 5 years. As the policy was last reviewed in May 2020, the revised policy was recently presented at the Policy Committee meeting held on the 14th of April. The City presented minor amendments to the policy as a result of an internal review, which are also in line with what we can see in similar sized local governments. The Policy Committee has recommended the adoption of the policy with amendments. I'm not intending presenting tonight on the first two amendments, which related to the quote levels and the number of quotes required, but I would like to present on the third amendment made by the committee, which effectively restricted the exemptions the City could access under clause 11.2 of the Functions and General Regulations. As per clause 11A of the regulations, a local government is required to prepare and adopt and is to implement a purchasing policy in relation to contracts for other persons that supply goods and services where the consideration under the contract is or expected to be $250,000 or less, or worth $250,000 or less. The requirement to implement the policy implies that Council is required to follow it for the purpose for which the policy is required. Or in other words, we expect that the policy could be binding on Council for purchases under $250,000. However, it is unclear what the legal implications could be for the policy requirements over $250,000, normally controlled by the regulations. We are still finalising legal advice in this respect. The legislative requirement for tenders to be public invited when consideration under the contract is or expected to be worth more than $250,000 unless any of the exemptions in sub-regulation 11.2 apply. The amendment as adopted by the committee limits the exemptions available to only two. I will now just provide a quick overview of what the implications of removing those exemptions would be. So the first exemption is under 11.2b, which is the supply of goods or services to be obtained through the Walga Preferred Supplier Program. The City does obtain goods and services via the Walga PSP. While we prefer to use tenders before the Walga panel, there are times it is either just not efficient or practical to do so. The most critical of these would be the hiring of temporary personnel, purchasing of some plants such as trucks, mowers, tractors and sweepers, library books and materials, some IT software and hardware, and in the landscaping areas, things such as softball or shade sail installation and some landscaping works. We also have contracts in place through the PSP for waste services such as processing garden organics, the issuing of and production of rates notices, which is outsourced to a printer, and some town planning consultancy. Tendering for each of these items is unlikely to see prices less than what would be obtained under the Walga panel arrangements and will increase lead times for each purchase. It will also reduce the availability of staff to negotiate, as tenders must be accepted as is. As an example, if we were to go out to quote for a playground under the Walga PSP, we do have some ability to contact the suppliers and ensure they understand the requirements and to negotiate with them. Under a tender, we must issue a specification, and that is the end of the matter until the contract is signed. The second exemption is 11.2e, and this is probably a little more concerning than the previous, which relates to goods or services to be supplied by or obtained through the government of the state or Commonwealth or any of its agencies, or by a local government or regional local government. We are yet unclear of what the impact of removing this exemption would be for the Mindarie Regional Council and the Catalina Regional Council. We will need to review the establishment agreements for both of these entities, but it may well be that if the exemption is not allowed for, the Council may not be able to continue supply waste through Mindarie Regional Council to the Tamala Park site. We are still clarifying that situation. We also provide access to the common use agreements negotiated by the Department of Treasury and Finance for a range of purchases, particularly passenger fleet, our fuel, and a lot of our software licences, particularly those from Microsoft. The common usage agreements are negotiated by the Department of Treasury and Finance on behalf of the entire state sector, and it's quite common for both state agencies and local governments to access them. The next exemption relates to 11.2f, which is where we have good reason to believe that because of the unique nature of goods or services required for any other reason, it is unlikely that there will be more than one potential supplier. We only use this once, which is the provision of surf lifesaving services with Surf Lifesaving Western Australia. We have gone to tender on that previously, and we only received the one tender. And the last exemption, and this one is quite critical, the second last, is the renewal of contracts. So there is an exemption at the moment under 11.2j where Council seeks to provide an extension of a contract for a service that was previously tendered. These are actually currently reported twice yearly to the Audit and Risk Committee to ensure there's proper oversight of the contract extensions. However, if the policy were to be amended as suggested, we would no longer be able to extend those contracts. And lastly, the 11.2K, which is the supply of goods and services under a pre-qualified supplier arrangement. The city does have 8 of these pre-qualified panel arrangements where we have presented a tender to council to allow us to access these services. This is actually under this particular exemption. These include things like the supplying and laying of turf, hand weeding in natural areas, provision of mowing services, precast stormwater drainage products, swimmer and associated products for Craigie Leisure Centre, traffic management plan services, and 2 types of tree maintenance. If this exemption was removed, we wouldn't be able to access those pre-qualified panels that are currently in place. We will be providing further information via a memo once we've been able to finalise legal advice on what the removal of these exemptions might mean for tender. And with that, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to take any questions that might arise.
Thank you. Questions, Council? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. I know it was noted that there'll be a memo. Will the memo cover off on all of the items under that regulation from 12.2A to 12.2AA? So all the letters of the alphabet? Given I noticed that some of them have been said to be critical, other ones might not be.
Director.
Mr Mayor, I only presented on the exemptions the city currently accesses. I'm happy to provide via memo, though, the entire list and whether or not we access them.
Thank you. And further on to that, the legal advice which is being sought, could we receive full copies of that legal advice and also the instructions to the lawyers to provide that advice?
Director Humphrey.
That's you, Mr Mayor. I'll take the question on notice. Legal advice is being prepared by our General Counsel internally. I'm quite happy to provide the advice as it's provided to me, and if there's further questions, they can be emailed to me and I'm happy to present them to General Counsel.
Councillor.
Thank you. And following on about, is it possible, and of course this will probably come out in the legal advice, is it possible for the council to have a policy for purchases over 250,000, given that the exercise of these exemptions is discretionary? So the city has a number of discretionary powers, whether it's to close a road or not. So to have a policy in this case is that it's a policy about when a discretion is used, not saying that a discretion is unlawful.
Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, I believe it is possible. I have worked for local governments previously that have a purchasing policy for goods under $250,000, and then they'll have a tender policy or similar title policy for purchases over $250,000. They sometimes provide guidance on what purchasing methods can be used, or alternatively, if an exemption is exercised, how it's to be reported to council.
Thank you. And just further as well, when can we roughly expect this memo? Can we receive it in far advance of the council meeting, if possible? And the reason I say that is that I think the city is probably aware of what the intent of the amendment was, which is just to have more oversight of purchases over 250,000. And so having the memo in advance and the legal advice would provide an opportunity to find some type of middle ground if there's ways to carve out further oversight in areas which the council might feel there needs to be, and in other areas to make sure the city doesn't grind to a halt.
Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the current estimated time to provide the advice is Monday, Tuesday next week. I'm happy to provide that to yourself as the Chair of the Audit Committee and then take any questions or requests for alternates appropriately.
Thank you.
Further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thanks through you, Mr Mayor. Just like to thank Director Humphrey for his extensive wordy presentation. I would like to sort of review that again, and I wonder if the wording can be included in the pack, please. Thank you.
Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to provide it by email to elected members.
Thank you. Can I please have a procedural motion to possibly refer back into the committee process if more time is required to consider those matters?
I believe that could be prepared.
Thank you. Councillor Raftis, did you seek a question? Councillor Chester, sorry.
Yes, with respect to my aforementioned expenditure of $42,000 on the fencing, I presume this new revised purchasing policy would have required 2 written quotes. to justify that expenditure. In fact, before this revision, did we actually obtain competitive quotes for that fencing, just out of curiosity?
Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, it would require 2 written quotes. At the moment, the minimum is 2 written quotations to receive for items between $10,000 and $50,000. The city does have a vendor panel arrangement where our suppliers or anyone, if an officer wishes to use a particular company, they must be registered with our purchasing team, and then we record the attempt to obtain the quotes. So all of that is recorded, and yes, that particular purchase would have had 2 written quotes.
Thank you. Further questions? Item 13.2.1, pop-up piazza, project philosophy and parameters. Questions on this item? 13.2.2, multi-storey car park, Joondalup City Centre, project philosophy and parameters. Questions on this item? Councillor Kingston.
Just going forward with this, the funding, given that there's now been a significant decrease in the money that is going into the parking reserve, is it envisioned that this will mostly be funded through general rates?
Director Lee. Director Humphrey.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the previous multi-storey car park was funded via a loan, which was, the final payment was made on that in April this year, literally only 2 weeks ago, and the revenue generated from the parking fees itself actually paid that loan. Whilst no determination has been made yet, it is likely our recommendation would be to fund it either from the reserve or a loan, which would be serviced by the parking fees generated.
Thank you. And following on for that, will it be self-funding in the same way that the previous one was? Or is that not likely now with the lower parking fees that are being charged?
Director.
The item before you is the philosophies and parameters. If it was Council's intent to ensure it was self-funding, we can provide an amendment or wording to that effect.
Councillor?
Just in an indicative sense, do we believe it will or won't be?
Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the city's position is that the provision of parking infrastructure in the CBD should be self-funded.
Thank you.
13.2.3, Neil Hawkins Park. Questions on this item? If not, then I'll kindly ask the person who's patiently waited in the gallery to exit, because we're about to go into our confidential item, which is the last item for tonight's agenda. If it's any consolation, I'm about to exit as well, because I can't be here for this one. So I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to come up and chair this item.
back onto recording. Thank you.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor, may I ask if we're continuing or?
Sorry, what would you like to ask, Councillor Kingston?
Oh, I'm just ask where we're up with things on the agenda.
I'm checking to see if the Mayor's coming back to continue the agenda. If he's not, I'll continue myself.
It's all right.
Here he is. Thank you.
Yep, no, got that, thank you. Reports of the CEO, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can advise at this stage there will be the following reports will be provided directly to Council for the meeting held on the 27th of May. The first is a confidential status update on Project Axiom, and the second is a proposal for levying differential rates for the 25-26 financial year.
Thank you. Urgent business will be dealt with at the ordinary council meeting. Item 16, motions of which previous notice has been given. Are there any notices of motion? Councillor Kingston.
Thank you. I will be putting one up writing to the state about the cat local law again, given that we were knocked back. And secondly, I don't know if I will be putting up one about a scheme amendment, but I will wait for the officer's advice.
Thank you. In that case, item 17 will be dealt with at the ordinary council meeting, and that concludes tonight's briefing session, and I close it at 9:55 p.m. Thank you.